Chapter 1172. How could Hong Tailong admit to such a heavy crime? He shook his head and denied it, saying that Yu Qianzhou had wrongly accused him. In the end, Yu Qianzhou threw out a sentence and Hong Tailong immediately admitted defeat. Fine. You don't want to admit it? I'll go argue with Coiling Dragon God and ask him to clarify this matter with you. Yu Qianzhou turned around and was about to leave. Hong Tailong panicked on the spot. He grabbed his shoulder and turned around, smiling apologetically. We can talk about it slowly. There's no need to trouble old ancestor. Some things have happened too long ago, I might have remembered it wrongly. Let me think about it. Yu Qianzhou sneered and asked coldly, Then did you remember anything? Hong Tailong revealed a look of contemplation and said slowly, Now that you've reminded me, I do remember something. There seem to be two ways to return to the divine realm. I heard that old ancestor Coiling Dragon opened up a space in the Netherworld, which is the Netherworld Divine Manor. There's a secret passage that leads to the Divine Realm, directly to the Dragon Clan's Divine Dragon Mountain in the Divine Realm. Only people of my Dragon Clan can find it. Also, when the Netherworld River Black Carp of the Netherworld River Aquatic Race successfully leaps through the Dragon's Gate, our Dragon Clan will send a Pegasus carriage down to the Divine Realm. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. Putting aside the passage to the Divine Realm in the Netherworld Divine Manor, he had personally experienced the Black Carp leaping through the Dragon's Gate and the Pegasus carriage. He had even sat on the Pegasus carriage, but he never dreamed that it led to the Divine Realm. If he had known earlier, he would have gone to the Divine Realm to take a look. After feeling regretful, he came back to his senses and asked again, That's it? Tell me honestly how much of what you said before was false. Squeeze it dry and say it again. Otherwise you'll have to explain to Coiling Dragon God yourself. Hong Tailong immediately begged on the verge of tears, Everything else I've said is the truth. Just like what you've said, I'm afraid that I won't be able to answer to the old ancestor, so I discussed with Yi Tiankong and purposely got trapped here so that I can answer when I'm found. Otherwise, do you think I like being trapped here? Even if Patriarch Coiling Dragon were to interrogate him directly, the result would still be the same. In that case, let Patriarch Coiling Dragon come and interrogate him face to face. Yu Qianzhou smirked as he flew along the green flames spewing out from the green lotus. Hong Tailong was dumbfounded on the spot. Then he started pounding his chest and stamping his feet in apprehension. He looked as if he was regretting that a disaster was about to befall him. Suddenly he raised his head and saw Yu Qianzhou flashing back. He was stunned. Yu Qianzhou looked at him for a while, then frowned and said in a deep voice, After thinking about it, I still feel that I should give you a chance to redeem yourself. Besides, it's not easy to meet the Coiling Dragon God. I wonder if you're willing to cherish this opportunity? The reason why he had left earlier was actually to trick Hong Tailong. Reality proved that Hong Tailong really did not hide anything. Otherwise he would have definitely called out to him. Thus he had turned back. Hong Tailong wasn't really an idiot. He more or less saw through his intentions. He immediately smiled bitterly and said, Of course I'm willing. I wonder how I can redeem myself? Yu Qianzhou looked at him with an awe-inspiring gaze. His expression suddenly turned solemn as he said word by word, Complete your unfinished mission and help me mete out punishment on behalf of the heavens. After that, other than yourself, no one will mention the matter of you colluding with Yi Tiankong. He wanted him to work for him. Hong Tailong cupped his fists and said with a bitter expression, I dare not to obey. I hope you remember your words. I'll help you get out of trouble right now. Yu Qianzhou didn't have the time to continue arguing with him. He directly dived into the boiling lava. Hong Tailong was stunned for a moment before he also jumped in. The bare-bottomed child silently sat on the green lotus and looked at the surging lava river. No one knew what he had understood or what he had thought of. At the bottom of the surging lava river that was several hundred meters deep, there was a space shrouded in purple mist. Within it, there was a transparent purple crystal that was the size of a small hill. 2 golden chains were pressed underneath it. Yu Qianzhou extended his palm to sense it. He was instantly shocked. So this entire purple crystal was actually condensed from the purple fire element. How much purple fire element was needed to condense such a large crystal? The entire purple crystal seemed to be secretly communicating with the entire heaven and earth. It was firmly embedded there. In order to move it, one would undoubtedly need a power that could shake the entire world. No wonder it could suppress Hong Tailong and prevent him from escaping. Yu Qianzhou, who was pushing his palm forward, slowly closed his eyes. The hazy purple mist began to slowly revolve and spread in all directions, silently returning to the heaven and earth. Purple mist rapidly rose from the purple crystal, and at the same time, it was also slowly shrinking. Half a day later, the entire purple crystal had completely dissipated. Hong Tailong's arms trembled, and the golden chains were controlled by him like they were his fingers. They quickly fell from his wrists and he opened his mouth and directly sucked them into his stomach. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He couldn't help but ask, "How did you eat it into your stomach?" Hong Tailong looked at his arms that had regained their freedom and laughed heartily. "There's a space in the stomach of my dragon race. It's just like your storage space. It's used to store things. So that's how it is." Yu Qianqiu looked at his stomach and felt a chill. He waved his hand and said, "Since you're already free, come with me." Hong Tailong was in high spirits. He readily agreed. He then asked curiously, "Where are we going?" The boiling lava flowed in the sky, but not a single drop fell. It illuminated the underground space with a red light. Yu Qianqiu raised his head and narrowed his eyes. Jintai and Bai Qi have opened the seal to the demonic realm. Now, Demon Lord Three Knights is leading the demonic realm army to sweep across the immortal and netherworld. I've personally witnessed Demon Lord Three Knights slaughtering over 200 million immortal realm cultivators. They don't even want to let the human realm off. Previously, it was precisely because the demonic realm army attacked that I activated the demonic ghost immortal punishing formation to deal with them. They probably won't barge into the human realm before they understand the situation here. Jintai and Bai Qi opened the passage to the demonic realm. Hong Tailong couldn't help but be shocked. His red brows furrowed. He recalled that Demon Lord Three Knights was Yi Tiankong's father. He then asked in a heavy voice, "You mean you want me to help you deal with the demonic realm army?" "I don't mind telling you the truth. I've been to the demonic realm before. I have the strength to fight against Demon Lord Three Knights' great demon king, but I'm definitely not Demon Lord Three Knights' opponent." Yu Qianqiu shook his head. "We'll deal with Demon Lord Three Knights one step at a time. What we need to do now is to stop them from harassing this human realm. The passage to the demonic realm is still sealed, but we need to destroy the immortal ascension stage to cut off any possibility of them barging in. Most importantly, we need to find a way to seal the passage to the netherworld and completely cut off any possibility of them entering this human realm. You should know how to seal the passage between the two realms, right? It's a pity I don't know sealing techniques." Hong Tailong stared at the slightly disappointed Yu Qianqiu with a burning gaze. "But I know a way to block the passage between the two realms. If someone uses a divine artifact to guard the entrance of the passage, it can also prevent people from the two realms from passing through." Yu Qianqiu's gaze slowly met his. He said in a heavy voice, "You mean you want me to use the heaven and earth splitting arrow to block the passage between the two realms?" "That's right." Hong Tailong nodded his head firmly. The heaven and earth splitting arrow isn't an ordinary divine artifact. If it hasn't recognized a master, blocking the passage between the two realms would still be dangerous. But it has already recognized a master. As long as we use it to block the passage between the two realms, no one will be able to move it. Unless you die. Yu Qianqiu pondered for a moment, then slowly said, "For the peace of this human realm, I've spared no expense and put in a lot of effort. Now that things have come to this, how can I let it repeat the mistakes of the past because of my selfishness? Looks like this is the only way." As he spoke, he opened his eyes wide and shouted, "All right. Let's do it. Use the divine arrow to block it." He was actually willing to give up on the heaven and earth splitting arrow. Hong Tailong was instantly filled with deep veneration. This kind of person didn't make him work for nothing. However, he had thought too highly of Yu Qianqiu. Actually, he didn't want to give up on such a divine artifact, but the situation forced him to do so for the time being. In addition, he had always suspected that there was some kind of conspiracy on this divine arrow, so he was in a state of anxiety. Besides, he believed that once he found a way to seal it, he would still be able to retrieve the divine arrow. Yu Qianqiu had already waved his hand, and the surrounding scenery changed continuously. When the scenery stabilized, the two of them had already arrived at the entrance to the netherworld. When Hong Tailong saw the sea of netherworld flames in front of him, he immediately turned around to take a look. The huge netherworld iron steel inscriptions and that huge door made him understand that they had already arrived at the entrance to the netherworld. He suddenly stared at Yu Qianqiu and cried out in shock, "You have a star bead? Nonsense. I'm the one who executes punishment on behalf of the heavens. What's so strange about having a star bead?" Yu Qianqiu revealed a very disdainful expression. He had only revealed a little bit of his skill to make Hong Tailong follow him wholeheartedly. He had originally wanted to show off a little, but he didn't expect the other party to be so knowledgeable, saving him a lot of effort to explain. He casually took out the heaven and earth splitting arrow and held it in his hand, stroking it regretfully. Then he resolutely and forcefully pushed open the door to the netherworld. Sharp eerie winds instantly gushed out like ink. The divine arrow entered the crack of the door and he shouted, "Expand!" The entire divine arrow immediately shone with golden light, and it rapidly grew longer and thicker, expanding the door to the netherworld. Only when half of the arrow was inside and the other half was outside, did the eerie winds cease. Seeing that Yu Qianshou had really given up on the heaven and earth splitting arrow, Hong Tailong was incomparably moved. Previously he suspected that Yu Qianshou would be reluctant to part with the heaven and earth splitting arrow and had been waiting to see. At this moment he instantly let go of his pride as a dragon and willingly submitted to Yu Qianshou. Hong Tailong took a deep breath and said, "I've heard a legend in the immortal realm. This door to the netherworld is extraordinary. It's easy to shatter but it's hard to merge again. If someone can use the true Samadhi fire to completely erase the various forms of life on the door and merge the entire door together seamlessly, separating the yin and yang, then the yin and yang will be severed. The entire door to the netherworld will disappear, and the netherworld passage will also disappear completely." "There's such a thing?" Yu Qianshou was startled. Then he shook his head and smiled bitterly. He stretched out his palm and green, black and purple flames appeared in his palm at the same time. He said, "I can control these three mystical flames, but my cultivation is too low. I can't merge them into the true Samadhi fire. Otherwise, so what if I completely sever the yin and yang realms?" Chapter 1173. Hong Tailong was speechless with his mouth slightly agape. He was wondering how many things this guy had hidden on him. How could he have anything he wanted? Furthermore, each and every one of them was unimaginable. As expected of the executioner of heaven, he was blessed by the heavens. Yu Qianshou retracted the flames in his palm and closed his mouth. "Since you possess three types of true fire, you must be proficient in the art of controlling fire. It won't be difficult to fuse them into the Samadhi true fire." Hong Tailong smiled faintly and said, "I can use the divine dragon empowerment technique to transfer a portion of my cultivation to you so that you have enough cultivation to fuse with the Samadhi true fire. However, it will take a long time. Without at least half a year of comprehension, it will be difficult to fuse them." Yu Qianshou's eyes lit up at first, but he shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "Half a year? I can do many things in this half a year. Now is not the time. Thank you for your kind intentions, but this is the time where I can use you. Preserving your cultivation is more useful to me." Seeing that he was able to resist the temptation of transferring his cultivation, Hong Tailong fell into deep thought as if he was hesitating about something. After a long time he slowly said, "There is another way. That is to devour the fire spirit, one of the 5 spirits of heaven and earth. Let the fire spirit's innate comprehension of fire fuse with you and you can quickly fuse them into the Samadhi true fire." "Fire spirit?" Yu Qianshou mocked himself. "Let alone devouring the fire spirit, I can even devour the 5 spirits of water, fire, metal, wood, and earth." Hong Tailong was stunned and said, "What do you mean?" "I know all of the 5 elements control arts." "What do you mean?" Yu Qianshou said disapprovingly. There was not a trace of pride on his face. "What?" Hong Tailong was shocked again and was stunned for a long time before he said anxiously, "You know all of the 5 elements control arts? How is that possible? How can a person cultivate all of the 5 elements control arts? What happens when the 5 elements clash? Don't you feel uncomfortable?" "You should have told me this earlier. I have already practiced it. What's the use of saying it now? Besides, I don't feel uncomfortable at all." Yu Qianshou shrugged. Then he stretched out his left hand and a water dragon appeared. It swam one round and ran back. With a stretch of his right hand, an earth dragon emerged and circled around before returning. Following that, a golden dragon appeared from each of his hands, and he kissed the greenwood elemental dragon. After separating, he retracted his hands. His shy and bashful look after having an affair was simply vivid and lifelike. Hong Tailong was instantly dumbfounded. The corners of his mouth twitched incessantly, and he screamed madly in his heart that there was no justice in this world. This guy's body is simply a treasure trove. As expected of the person who executes punishments on behalf of the heavens. However, can a person who executes punishments on behalf of the heavens be so extravagant and unscrupulous? He was simply a person who was blessed by the heavens. If they were in the God realm, they would be envied to death. Hong Tailong no longer had any doubts about Yu Qianshou's identity as the heaven's executioner. He dared to pat his chest and guarantee that if he were to admit the wrong person again, he would dig his eyeballs out and feed them to the dogs. Let's go. We'll go to the dense fog forest and completely destroy the immortal ascension stage. Just as Yu Qianqiu was about to wave his hand and teleport away, Hong Tailong held his hand and sighed, I know where the fire spirit is. Yu Qianqiu was startled. His eyes quickly lit up as he asked, Where? You've already met him twice. Hong Tailong retracted his hand and sighed. Yu Qianqiu was instantly confused. Hong Tailong had been trapped for so many years, and this was the first time he had come out with him. However, he said that he had already met him twice. Just who could it be? Suddenly a thought flashed through his mind. He recalled the kid who slept on the green lotus with his buttocks naked. He said in astonishment, could it be that kid in the green fire? Apart from that kid, he really couldn't think of anyone else that Hong Tailong knew he had met twice. Furthermore, that kid was actually sleeping in the fire. His background was truly unimaginable. Sigh. This is all fate. Only now do I understand why someone inexplicably gave me 9 precious green lotus fire seeds when I was about to leave the Divine Dragon Mountain. Feelings are all prepared for you. It's all destined and arranged. Hong Tailong looked at Yu Qianqiu and shook his head with a bitter smile. That's right, it's Qing'er. Originally, the 9-petaled green lotus could nurture 9 fire spirits. Unfortunately, you stole the green fire at the critical moment of nurturing them. Hence, 8 of them died prematurely. Yu Qianqiu took a deep breath. Although that fat kid was crafty, he really couldn't do anything to him after he devoured him. He originally thought it was Hong Tailong's grandson. He didn't expect it to be a fire spirit. After a moment of silence, he shook his head with a bitter smile. Then forget it. I really can't do it. After all, that kid is not an outsider. It's nothing. I won't erase his consciousness. I will extract it and store it. In the future, when I have the chance to return to the divine world, I will find a way to find the green lotus fire seed for him to nurture again. Hong Tailong's smile was a little unnatural. It's just that it will take many years for him to be reborn. It will be hard on him. Yu Qianqiu lowered his head and frowned for a while. Let's talk about this later. Let's go destroy the immortal ascension stage first. With a wave of his hand, the two disappeared through the exit of the netherworld. Meanwhile, the ball of black light that escaped from the entrance of the netherworld passed through the netherworld and directly returned to the immortal world's mystic immortal city. Demon Lord Three Knights, who occupied the newly constructed branch of Unrequited Love Palace, was sitting high above. Currently, almost no one in the netherworld or immortal world dared to resist the demon world's army. Wang Qing and his son had also escaped into the netherworld god palace. Below, a few great demon kings were discussing how to provoke the netherworld god palace. At this moment, a cry of alarm came from outside. Everyone turned to look and saw a ball of black light charging into the main hall and floating in the air. A majestic and ancient aura immediately filled the entire main hall, shocking everyone's soul. The few great demon kings and Eunuch Li, who was standing beside Demon Lord Three Knights, all knelt down on one knee in shock. They shouted in unison, "Greetings, Lord Demon God." The Demon Dao generals who came to capture the intruder and the Demon Dao generals sitting inside the main hall all trembled. Jin Tai was among them while Bai Qi had gone to the netherworld. Everyone didn't expect this ball of black light to be the arrival of the legendary demon god. They immediately knelt down and shouted in worship. Demon Lord Three Knights, on the other hand, had never come into contact with a demon god before. When he saw everyone's actions, he sucked in a cold breath. Just as he got up and was about to kneel down, he heard Yan Zhuixing's urgent voice. "Demon Lord, save me." Everyone was stunned and looked up. A red light flashed in Demon Lord Three Knights' eyes. When he saw Yan Zhuixing's nascent soul, he immediately stopped kneeling and said in shock, "Yan Zhuixing, how did you become like this? Where's your corporeal body?" The others also stood up in shock, feeling like they had knelt for nothing. Yan Zhuixing, who was in the black light, immediately recounted the tragic experience of him, Li Tian, and the other 3 great demon kings barging into the human world. In the end, he emphasized with grief and indignation, "If it wasn't for Lord Demon God breaking through the void and rushing over from the divine world to save me, I would have been like great demon king Li Tian and the others, turning into ashes. Demon Lord, please find me a suitable corporeal body." Everyone sucked in a cold breath. They didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to be so powerful. He actually hit such a terrifying killing move and instantly killed everyone. What was even more shocking was that in order to save Yan Zhuixing, Lord Demon God had instantly broken through the void from the divine world and descended into the human world. Just how powerful was his cultivation? It was simply unimaginable. Many people's gazes were filled with extreme reverence. There was even reverence in them. They couldn't wait to see Lord Demon God's glory with their own eyes. Demon Lord Three Knights clenched his fists tightly. He was actually trembling in excitement because of Demon God's divine ability. He was also honored by the glory of his ancestors. In the past, there were actually many people who doubted whether Yan Zhuoxing was Lord Demon God's personal disciple. They were very suspicious about him becoming the Vice Palace Master of Demon Palace and felt that it was impossible. Why would Lord Demon God choose a personal disciple from the divine world to the human world? However, everything that happened in front of them made everyone dispel their suspicions. They were extremely respectful to Yan Zhuoxing and didn't dare to underestimate him in the slightest. Demon Lord Three Knights felt that it was a great pity that he couldn't see his ancestors' shocking glory with his own eyes. That was the God he had heard everyone around him praise since he was young. It was the source of his pride. Lord Demon God's glorious achievements had already been engraved in his bones. He had always wanted to repeat that proud legend. He calmed his excited emotions and slowly let out a breath. He tilted his head slightly to look at Eunuch Li beside him. Eunuch Li nodded in understanding. His gaze quickly swept across the crowd and finally landed on a guard at the door. He discovered that his cultivation and physical body matched Yan Zhuoxing's nascent soul. Suddenly he grabbed at the air and a gust of wind blew in the hall. That person was sucked over without any ability to resist. After being grabbed by the shoulder by Eunuch Li, he immediately understood that he was about to be possessed. He immediately cried out, "Demon Lord, spare me! Demon Lord!" Before he finished speaking, Eunuch Li had already slapped his head. Several white halos of light repeatedly expelled the dark red blood mist from his body. Suddenly, the white halos of light quickly retracted. Eunuch Li pinched open the guard's mouth and twisted it towards the black light that was enveloping Yan Zhuoxing's nascent soul in the air. With a whoosh, the black light directly entered the person's mouth. That person's abdomen swelled and squirmed, and then there was no more movement. Eunuch Li casually picked up that person by the waist. Without saying anything to anyone, he turned around and went to the back hall. After everyone present witnessed this scene, they all kept quiet out of fear, not daring to say anything. Demon Lord Three Knights' gaze swept across the hall and landed on Jin Tai's somewhat strange expression. He shook off his scarlet cloak and sat down. He coldly asked, "Jin Tai, what's going on in that human realm? I heard that you and Bai Qi joined hands to fight a person called the Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords. You even suffered a great loss. I believe you know the situation there better than us." Jin Tai hurriedly walked to the center and bowed. "Demon Lord, what's going on in that human realm?" Back then, that Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords appeared strangely. This subordinate even suspected that he was someone from the demon realm. From what Vice Palace Lord said, it was likely that the Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords' heaven and earth splitting arrow that heavily injured them. I didn't expect that it had already fallen into Yu Qianqiu's hands. However, the heaven and earth splitting arrow back then didn't seem to have such great power. This subordinate is also a little confused. Chapter 1174. Yu Qianqiu and Hong Tailong's figures suddenly appeared outside the dense fog forest where the colorful fog lingered. The two of them looked around and didn't find any movement. Their gazes landed on the gorgeous fog with different expressions. In reality, it was very unlikely that anyone would come here. Although the colorful fog was mesmerizing, there was no need for ordinary people to set foot in this barren land. Hong Tailong suddenly turned around and looked at Yu Qianqiu, sighing, "Star bead is really magical. It can actually go wherever you want to go. No matter how far the distance is, it's all in the blink of an eye. It's not as magical as you think. You have to set the coordinates beforehand." Yu Qianqiu paused for a moment. He turned around and asked curiously, "How much do you know about star bead?" He originally thought that the other party understood star bead very well. In the end, the other party's words made him suspicious. "I'm not too sure. I've only heard rumors that it's a divine artifact refined by Tao. Every bead might have different functions, but those who can use star bead are people who can inherit Tao." Hong Tailong looked at Yu Qianqiu with a complicated gaze. There was also some envy in it. Yu Qianqiu smiled disapprovingly. He didn't even know who Tao was, let alone inheriting Tao. Just the star bead that he knew had already changed owners 3 times. First, it landed in by Changchun's hands. Then it landed in by Suzhin's hands. Finally, he picked it up. It had nothing to do with inheriting Tao. However, he only kept these words in his heart. He wouldn't tell Hong Tailong. However, he was still rather interested in that mysterious Tao. He asked, "Who exactly is that Tao? I've heard people mentioning it several times, but they didn't mention it in detail. Can you tell me about it?" Hong Tailong shook his head and said, "I've only heard of it. I've never seen it. It seems that only a few people have seen it. However, my dragon race and phoenix race have always obeyed him." "Damn it. Seems like experts like to play mysterious." Yu Qianqiu curled his lips in disdain and looked at the dense fog forest again. "What do we do now?" Hong Tailong looked at the seven-colored fog with a perplexed expression. Then he said decisively, "Go in. First, I'll destroy the immortal ascension stage and naturally cut off the connection between the immortal world and the human world. Then I'll take the soul-forming smoke." "All right." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and the two of them disappeared. In the blink of an eye, they reappeared in the golden square. The moment Hong Tailong landed on the ground, he scanned his surroundings. Then a red light erupted from his body and soared into the sky. His astonishing aura forced Yu Qianqiu to quickly move far away to observe. Roar. A resounding and vigorous dragon roar resounded throughout the world, shaking the entire basin and the golden plaza. The rainbow-colored clouds in the surroundings began to surge. After the red light that pierced through the heavens and the earth vanished, a 200 zhang long red dragon stretched out its claws. Its imposing aura was unstoppable. After its body, which was covered in red scales, curled up and swam back, the arrogant dragon shows remorse suddenly raised a gust of wind and plunged down. Boom. The altar in the center of the golden plaza was smashed deep into the ground. Then the huge red dragon rapidly circled around the huge basin. The huge dragon's fangs opened its mouth and sucked in crazily. All the gold bricks, gold nuggets, gold pillars and other gold objects on the golden plaza were sucked into its stomach in just a short while. The entire dazzling golden plaza immediately became a scene of devastation. Then the huge red dragon shook its head and tail at lightning speed, crazily crashing into the surrounding mountains and basins. Rumble. Amidst the rumbling sounds, Yu Qianqiu sucked in a breath of cold air and quickly dodged to the sky to observe the situation. He saw that the huge basin below had completely collapsed in just a moment's time. Everything had been razed to the ground. The rainbow-colored fog that had gathered in the surroundings had also lost its restraints and started to disperse with the wind. "Oh!" The dragon roared once again. The huge red dragon soared into the sky and looked down at the vast land. Looking at the huge dragon beside him with its four claws wide open and its long body wriggling with the sound of wind and thunder, Yu Qianqiu was so excited that he actually dodged and stood on the huge dragon's ferocious head. He stood between the two antlers with his hands clasped behind his back. A feeling of arrogance welled up in him. The huge dragon's red eyes turned to look at him. It did not show any displeasure. Instead, it said in a deep rumbling voice, "You have the star bead. Are you afraid of the soul-transforming smoke?" "No." Yu Qianqiu shook his head forcefully. "Then stand still. I'm going to take this soul-transforming smoke. I can't let it wreak havoc on the world." "Oh." The dragon roared angrily in the sky. The huge red scales on its body slightly opened up. Its aura surged up and down its body. Suddenly the wind and clouds surged. The huge dragon opened its fangs and swooped down. The vast land was suddenly swept up by a gust of wind. A strong suction force carried the rainbow-colored fog into the huge dragon's mouth like a rainbow. The huge dragon soared into the sky and danced around, chasing after the scattered rainbow-colored fog. After sweeping away all the rainbow-colored fog, the huge dragon shook its head and waved its tail as it soared into the sky. After circling around its surroundings once, another resounding dragon roar shook the heavens and the earth. Without any hesitation, it directly rode the wind and climbed the clouds, flying across the sky towards the horizon. Dragon's roar of the nine heavens changes. Hong Tailong might have been trapped underground for a long time. It had been a long time since he indulged himself in the sky. From time to time, he would let out a deafening roar to vent his emotions. Yu Qianqiu expressed his understanding. He did not stop Hong Tailong and allowed him to soar into the sky. Meanwhile, he was also enjoying the legendary feeling of riding a dragon. No matter how fierce the wind blew against him, his green robe fluttered in the sky. He felt that his life was not in vain. However, it was, after all, a huge fellow flying in the sky. Coupled with Hong Tailong's deafening roars from time to time, it was hard for the mortals on the ground not to notice it. However, no one could see the tiny Yu Qianqiu standing on the dragon's head. "Look, what's that in the sky? Divine dragon. It's a divine dragon. It's a divine dragon." Everyone look, it's a divine dragon. Passing through the borders of Wuxia, the mortals on the ground raised their heads and pointed at the sky. Everyone who could walk rushed out of their houses or onto the streets, pointing at the sky. Hong Tai-long seemed to enjoy the feeling of being the center of attention and admiration again. It was as if he had found the supreme glory that belonged to the dragon race. He intentionally slowed down his flying speed and roared even more frequently, as if he was afraid that others could not see him. When he saw a city with many people, he would even fly a few rounds in the sky to show off, flying towards the most crowded places. Yu Qianqiu did not know whether to laugh or cry. This Hong Tai-long was old, but he was still a flirtatious dragon. If he had known earlier, he would have dragged some people to see the scene of him being imprisoned. In the sky above Huaxia's capital city, a few dragon roars shook the entire city. In the blink of an eye, the streets were filled with people, pointing at the dragon flying in the sky. Endless sounds of astonishment and commotion rose and fell. In the palace, Shi Wenguang and the officials were discussing matters when they suddenly heard the shocking dragon roar. Another guard ran over to report that there was a dragon flying in the sky. Shi Wenguang and the officials immediately ran out to watch the commotion. The imperial concubines of the imperial concubines also stood outside and looked up at the sky. In the imperial preceptor Yongzhen's residence, a stream of light shot into the sky. Shi Xiaotian stood tall in the sky, looking at the dragon flying in circles in front of him. Other than shock, he was also on high alert. He vaguely realized that there was someone standing on the dragon's head. When Hong Tai-long's vanity was satisfied and he left, Shi Xiaotian suddenly realized that the person riding on the dragon was actually Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu, who was standing with his hands behind his back, also noticed him. He nodded at him and smiled. The dragon instantly flew past the petrified Shi Xiaotian. Shi Xiaotian was startled awake by the strong wind and immediately shouted, "Boss!" He quickly chased after him. Yu Qianqiu turned to look at him and waved his hand with a warm smile, indicating for him to go back. He then turned back and scolded softly, "Hong Tai-long, have you had enough of being coquettish? If someone familiar sees you, they would think that I like to show off. I've only come out for a breath of fresh air after over 100,000 years. I've lost my composure. Please forgive me." Hong Tai-long chuckled. With a shake of his body, he quickly adjusted his direction and increased his speed, flying straight for the demon region. How could Shi Xiaotian catch up to Hong Tai-long's flying speed? Seeing Yu Qianqiu riding the dragon into the horizon, he couldn't catch up no matter how hard he tried. A feeling of helplessness welled up in his heart as he stopped in the sky. His face was filled with desolation. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that Boss would be able to ride a dragon and fly in the sky. Every time he saw Boss would give him a surprise that made him envious. Boss's level was getting higher and higher, and he was falling further and further behind. To be honest, the life that Yu Qianqiu had displayed was the cultivation life that Shi Xiaotian had yearned for a long time. Only by cultivating like this could one not cultivate in vain. He had always desired this, but it was a pity that Boss did not bring him along, leaving him with endless melancholy and grief. However, Shi Xiaotian was inexperienced, so how could he know the dangers behind this glory? Little did he know that Yu Qianqiu had purposely pulled Shi Xiaotian out of danger because of their friendship. Humans were always like this. What they could not obtain was what they desired the most. They would often neglect the beauty around them. Not long after the depressed Shi Xiaotian returned to the imperial preceptor Yongzhen's residence, his father Shi Wenguang hurriedly rushed over. He pulled Shi Xiaotian aside and asked anxiously, "Was that a divine dragon flying in the sky just now? Was it a divine dragon? Did I see wrongly?" The shock on his face had yet to fade. He had purposely come over to seek confirmation. Shi Xiaotian sighed and slowly sat on the spacious armchair. With a desolate smile he said, "Yes. The one riding the divine dragon was Ol. Mr. Yu?" "It's Mr. Yu?" Shi Wenguang exclaimed. His face was filled with envy as he shook his head and sighed. After a long time he said, "Riding the divine dragon to fly in the sky. Mr. Yu is really a godly person. Why didn't you invite him over?" Wanting to see Yu Qianqiu was a pretense. In fact, he did not like to see Yu Qianqiu at all. This was because he was used to being an emperor and was used to being high and mighty. He was a little conflicted about bowing to others. In fact, he really wanted to see the legendary divine dragon up close. Mr. Yu Qianqiu has other matters to attend to, so it's inconvenient for him to come. Shi Xiaotian squeezed out a smile and said, "Father, you should go back to handle the affairs of the country. I'm going to cultivate in seclusion." Shi Wenguang sighed and left, leaving Shi Xiaotian paralyzed on the armchair. In his mind, he recalled the awe-inspiring scene of his boss riding the divine dragon. It was a pity that he could not share in the glory. Little did he know that after they parted, the two of them never met again. The scene of Yu Qianqiu riding the divine dragon and turning back to wave at him with a smile became the most unforgettable scene in Shi Xiaotian's long life. He searched for it in the future but could never think of it. He could only reminisce about it. Chapter 1175. The sky was high and the clouds were vast. Not a single trace of green could be seen in the demonic ghost region. It was no longer the demonic ghost region that was covered in dark clouds and overgrown with demonic ghosts. In the vast wilderness, Yu Qianqiu walked around with his hands behind his back. Under his feet was an underground space that spewed out green flames. Below him was a surging lava river. Yu Qianqiu sent Hong Tailong down, but he didn't dare to face the naked fat kid who was looking at him curiously. He quickly escaped outside, not wanting to hear or see the conversation between Hong Tailong and the kid. Yu Qianqiu walked to a cliff with his hands behind his back and looked around. He was unable to connect the desolate scene before him with the famous demonic ghost region of the past. He silently pondered for a long time. Suddenly the ground shook, followed by the sound of something breaking through the ground. Yu Qianqiu pursed his lips but he didn't turn around. Green flames gushed out from the hole on the ground as Hong Tailong slowly rose up with the bare buttocks child in tow. The child looked left and right, curiously looking at this desolate world. This was the first time he had seen the true appearance of this world. A small bird that flew across the sky had aroused his great interest, causing his gaze to chase after it with an unrelenting desire to part with it. Yu Qianqiu. Hong Tailong's voice was heavy as he walked behind Hong Tailong with the kid. Yu Qianqiu slowly turned around and saw the kid cowering behind Hong Tailong in fear, as if he already knew his fate. Yu Qianqiu wanted to squeeze out a harmless smile, but it looked worse than crying. He coughed and smiled bitterly at Hong Tailong. Forget it. Hong Tailong pulled the kid out from behind, squatted down and looked at the kid. What's wrong? Didn't we agree on this? The kid looked at Yu Qianqiu with fear and replied weakly, Grandpa, I'm scared. Hong Tailong buried his head, then raised it and smiled. Didn't Grandpa tell you? The immortal realm doesn't allow people from the lower realm to step into it. This is the only way I can bring you back to the immortal realm. Furthermore, you shouldn't exist in the mortal realm. Hong Tailong, forget it. Yu Qianqiu cupped his fists and bowed. Unexpectedly, the child bit his finger and said to Yu Qianqiu with a bit of shyness, Can I go see the world first? Then he lowered his head and said in an aggrieved tone, I still don't know what the human world is like. I'm afraid that when I reach the God realm. Hong Tailong frowned but Yu Qianqiu hurriedly said, Sure. Hong Tailong, bring him around to take a look. I beg you. He could only beg Hong Tailong. He did not dare to accompany this child to look around. Hong Tailong carried the child and turned into a beam of light, disappearing into the distance. Yu Qianqiu touched his forehead in a dilemma. He walked to the place where the blue fire was spewing out and jumped down. He used the metal art and earth art to seal the fire hole. Then he flew back up and used the earth art to completely bury the space below. Then he sat down cross-legged on the ground. 3 days later, Hong Tailong carried the child back. The child had already put on his clothes and was holding a candied haw in each of his hands. However, his eyes had lost their usual liveliness. He was just a gluttonous child who felt that the candied haw was delicious and was munching on it numbly. Yu Qianqiu looked at the child and sensed something. Hong Tailong placed the child in front of him. The child looked at Yu Qianqiu blankly as if he did not recognize him. Hong Tailong took away the candied haw in the child's hands, sealed it in a crystal ball and swallowed it. When the child saw that there was nothing left to eat, he immediately hugged Hong Tailong's thigh and wailed. Glistening tears immediately appeared in Hong Tailong's eyes. He raised his head to the sky and howled. After which, his hand moved like lightning, slapping the child's head. The clothes on the child's body instantly turned into ashes, while the child's body condensed into a red ball of light in his palm. Hong Tailong sent the red ball of light to the mouth of Yu Qianqiu, who was sitting cross-legged. Yu Qianqiu's dry lips swallowed and slowly opened his mouth. Hong Tailong slapped the red ball of light into his mouth, then turned towards the sky and choked with tears. Yu Qianqiu immediately felt a boiling sensation in his abdomen. He suppressed his agitated emotions and forced the red ball of light in his abdomen into his dantian. Suddenly, a golden light burst out from Yu Qianqiu's dantian and shone on the red ball of light. In an instant, the red ball of light turned back into the child. The child cheered and flew toward the red crystal bead. He swallowed the red crystal bead into his stomach. In an instant, red light burst out from his body. Yu Qianqiu suddenly felt a connection with the child. The child's expression instantly turned solemn. He sat cross-legged on the spot where the red crystal ball originally was and began to revolve around the nascent soul in his dantian along with the other 4 crystal balls. Yu Qianqiu immediately felt that his cultivation had increased a little. However, the increase was not huge. When he thought about how he could accept the cultivation of the 5 spirits after devouring them, he reckoned that the child's cultivation had fused with his own. The child's innate understanding of fire surged into his mind like a tidal wave. He then began to quietly sort it out. At night, Hong Tailong gazed at the endless starry sky with his hands behind his back. Suddenly, a light flashed behind him. He slowly turned his head and saw a ball of blue fire on Yu Qianqiu's left shoulder, a ball of black fire on his right shoulder, and a ball of purple fire on top of his head. The situation was extremely strange. Not long after, the blue and black fire on his left and right shoulders slowly floated to the top of his head and pressed towards the purple fire in the middle. After the 3 flames collided with each other, they violently fluctuated as if they were repelling each other. Yu Qianqiu, who was sitting cross-legged, had a grave expression on his face. After about 2 hours, the 3 violently fluctuating flames finally calmed down and started to merge together bit by bit. When the 3 flames had completely merged together, Yu Qianqiu's eyes suddenly opened. 2 rainbow-colored rays of light shot out from his eyes. The overlapping 3 colored flames above his head rumbled like thunder and completely merged together in an instant. The gorgeous 3 colored flames turned into 7 colors. Instantly, the flames rose to a height of 100 meters. A rainbow-colored fire dragon burned incessantly above Yu Qianqiu's head. The terrifyingly high temperature immediately caused the ground to crack with crackling sounds. Countless cracks rapidly extended in all directions. Hong Tailong's pupils shrank. Even though he was a fire elemental fire dragon, he still found it hard to endure. Suddenly he felt a terrifyingly high temperature surrounding his body. Clearly Yu Qianqiu had noticed it. True Samadhi fire. Hong Tailong exclaimed. The remaining sadness on his face was instantly swept away. He clapped his hands and shouted, "You succeeded." The rainbow-colored rays of light that burst out from Yu Qianqiu's eyes quickly retracted, forming 2 balls of rainbow-colored flames in his eyes. Yu Qianqiu slowly stood up and spread his arms to embrace the heavens and earth. His entire body instantly ignited with rainbow-colored flames, combining with the fire dragon above his head. They soared into the sky, reaching a height of 1,000 meters. The world flickered with rainbow-colored light, illuminating the desolate demon domain. It was as if the demon domain had obtained a new life. Yu Qianqiu slowly looked at Hong Tailong and said indifferently, "So, this is the true Samadhi fire. So it is rainbow-colored. I can feel its terrifying destructive might. It even gives me the urge to fight the demon lord 3 nights head-on." Hong Tailong turned a deaf ear to Xiao Chen's words. He raised his head and looked at the rainbow-colored flames that soared 1,000 meters in shock. He cried out involuntarily, "Why is there so much true Samadhi fire?" Lowering his head, he looked at Yu Qianqiu and said, "How many blue flames, black flames and purple flames are hidden in your body? You actually managed to fuse so many true Samadhi fire? This is only a portion. The true Samadhi fire in my body is enough to turn the area within 1,000 meters into a sea of true Samadhi fire. Furthermore, after fusing the 3 flames, it is equivalent to having 2 empty spots in my body. I can also collect the 3 flames at any time and fuse them at any time. My body can store more than twice the amount of true Samadhi fire. A mere 1,000-meter-long fire dragon is nothing," Yu Qianqiu said indifferently. Hong Tailong shook his head in disbelief. He had seen the true Samadhi fire by chance in the immortal realm. However, he had only collected 3 types of flames and fused them, then stored them in special treasures for future use. He had never heard of anyone being able to store the true Samadhi fire in their own body. Furthermore, it was such a large-scale storage and could be refined and stored at any time. This is simply unbelievable. If the artifact refinement experts of the immortal realm were to find out about this, they would definitely capture you and use you as a refinement fire cauldron. You must know that the best fire seed for refining divine equipment is this true Samadhi fire that can refine anything," Hong Tailong exclaimed. Yu Qianqiu gently clasped his palms together, and the soaring true Samadhi fire immediately retreated back into his body. The rainbow-colored flames leaping in his eyes also disappeared at the same time. Only then did Hong Tailong dare to approach him. He patted his shoulder and laughed. with so much true samadhi fire, you and I now have the capital to make a trip to the immortal realm and the netherworld. We'll slaughter those bastards until they wail like ghosts and howl like wolves. We'll let them know that I, Hong Tailong, have returned. Ha! Yu Qianqiu shook his head and sighed. By right I should be happy. However, I can't feel happy at all. This is all thanks to Qing. Speaking of that naked child, Hong Tailong's expression instantly dimmed. He smiled faintly and said, I wonder when I can return to the immortal realm. Even if I do return to the immortal realm, I'm afraid it'll be several tens of thousands of years before I can see Qing again. Yu Qianqiu took a deep breath. He pulled himself together and said, all right. Let's not talk about such a depressing matter. Let's go to the gate of the netherworld to retrieve the heaven and earth splitting arrow. Then we'll use the true samadhi fire to completely seal the passageway to the netherworld. After that, we'll join hands and go to the immortal realm and the netherworld to deal with them. It'll be best if we can capture Kintai. I'll devour him as well. At that time, my cultivation will skyrocket. I want to see how the devil path will unify the three realms. The two of them disappeared from where they were at the same time. In the blink of an eye, they appeared in front of the gate of the netherworld. Looking at the gigantic divine arrow embedded in the gate of the netherworld, Yu Qianqiu made a grabbing motion with his 5 fingers and said sternly, come back. The divine arrow immediately shone with a golden light and shrunk rapidly. The gate of the netherworld closed quickly as well. A chilly wind that was as sharp as ink whistled out. After the gate of the netherworld was completely closed, there were still a few large holes in the middle of the gate. They were the large holes made by the sharp hexagonal blade of the divine arrow. The chilly wind that was as sharp as ink continued to pour out from the holes. Chapter 1176. Yu Qianqiu's long green robe fluttered in the fierce chilly wind, but he was indifferent to it. His eyes fell on the reliefs on the dark gate. The faces of the old man, the child, the man, and the woman were all different. Their expressions were vivid and lifelike as if they were telling him something. Wang. A rainbow-colored light blossomed in this underground world filled with cold wind. The true samadhi fire enveloped Yu Qianqiu's entire body. The wind didn't scatter it as if it was solid. Yu Qianqiu's expression was solemn. He didn't know if he could completely seal the underworld passage by doing this, nor did he know if it was right, but he knew that this ghost gate was connected to the human world. It was too unfair to the living beings in the human world. If the ghost cultivator inside was unhappy, the living beings in the human world would suffer. No matter if it's right or wrong, since the affairs of the world are unpredictable, then let me be the one to administer punishment on behalf of the heaven. Whether it's right or wrong, I will bear the responsibility alone. A loud voice that sounded like he had become a Buddha suddenly resounded in the underground space. Perhaps it was because he had become a demon, but the skeleton sculptures on the walls of the netherworld Iron Mountain immediately reverberated with the same voice. The voice was like the sound of endless Sanskrit. Hong Tailong's heart suddenly surged with an indescribable solemn feeling. His gaze swept across the surroundings, but he didn't know how this voice was formed. Yu Qianqiu had already struck out with his palm. The true samadhi fire on his body shot out from his arm, forcing back the cold wind that was blowing out. The rainbow-colored wall of fire covered the entire ghost gate of the netherworld. The expressions of the human skulls on the black door gradually changed. Then it slowly melted and disappeared, fusing with the entire door. It was as if all living beings had cut off their extravagant desires towards this world. All greed, anger, and delusion were separated into yin and yang. Dust to dust, dust to dust. The two worlds of yin and yang would never be connected again. The few cracks on the dark door were also gradually melted by the melted black molten iron. The gap between the door and the door frame was also completely closed. Yu Qianqiu withdrew the true samadhi fire back into his body with a serious expression. The mournful, sinister winds completely died down, and the echoes of the Buddhist chants also disappeared. After the two of them looked around, Yu Qianqiu turned around and spread his hands at Hong Tailong. Didn't you say that after the samadhi true fire sealed the underworld gate, the underworld passage would completely disappear? How come I don't feel anything? Could it be that it completely disappeared just like that? I've only heard of this legend. How would I know if it's true or not? Hong Tailong smiled bitterly. Before he could finish his sentence, he realized that there was something wrong with Yu Qianqiu's gaze as he looked behind him. He quickly turned around and saw that the blazing ghost flames were gradually dying down. The blazing flames from earlier were slowly being suppressed, and the intensity of the flames gradually weakened to the point where there was nothing left. The red molten lava kept on seething. Suddenly, as if a hole had opened up in the ground, all the fiery red molten lava instantly gushed into the depths of the ground. The entire underground space became pitch black, and even with their cultivations they could not see each other. It was as if they had entered some kind of black hole. Yu Qianqiu immediately became vigilant, afraid that there might be some danger. He immediately wanted to release his divine sense to bring Hong Tailong away, but he realized that he could not release his divine sense outside his body. What made him even more horrified was that his connection with Utopia had been completely severed. He could not leave even if he wanted to. Hong Tailong. Yu Qianqiu opened his mouth and shouted, but he realized that he could not make any sound. He wanted to move his limbs, but he realized that it was just wishful thinking. It was as if his soul had completely lost connection with his physical body, and only his thoughts and consciousness still existed. Damn. How did this happen? Could it be that I've really done something wrong? Is this a punishment for me? Yu Qianqiu shouted silently into the endless darkness. A deep sense of fear rose from the bottom of his heart, but it was mostly filled with indignation and grief. He hysterically wanted to tear apart this endless darkness, but he was powerless to do so. Suddenly, spots of light flashed in front of his eyes, and he saw Hong Tailong, who was just inches away from him. The horrified Hong Tailong also saw him, and the two of them were stunned at the same time. They subconsciously raised their hands only to discover that they could move. However, their abilities had not returned. The two of them wanted to get closer, but they realized that no matter how fast they walked, they could not get close to each other. This short distance seemed to have become the end of the world. The two of them desperately ran toward each other. However, the two of them fell to the ground in exhaustion, unable to take another step forward. The endless feeling of strangeness almost caused the two of them to break down. They could see each other shouting loudly for them, but not only could they not hear it, neither could the other party. The two of them, who were sitting paralyzed on the ground, seemed to be floating in the endless void. They looked around helplessly, and the nether metal wall that was embossed with countless skulls suddenly became clear. Spots of light constantly floated out from the two empty eye sockets of the skulls. When the entire space was filled with countless spots of light, the skull wall quietly disappeared into the void. The drifting spots of light gradually moved rhythmically, but it also seemed to be without any pattern. Gradually, it formed a scene that looked like a vast starry sky. The two of them suddenly realized that they were sitting paralyzed in the endless starry sky, and they were even more shocked. The vast starry sky was weaving an ancient existence. Suddenly, all the stars trembled, and like a meteor shower, they flew toward a certain direction, some even passing through the bodies of the two of them. The two of them looked in that direction and they saw the door to the netherworld. All the meteor shower easily passed through the wall without any resistance, and the door to the netherworld was not damaged at all. The scene was exceptionally magnificent, and an indescribable feeling of great vicissitudes surged into the hearts of the two of them. When the last spot of light flew through the door, the entire door to the netherworld suddenly distorted, turning into a ball of black light. The black light was so deep that it seemed like it could devour everything. The more it spun, the bigger it became. Suddenly, it condensed into a point and disappeared. The two of them immediately felt the world tremble, as if they had woken up from a nightmare. The two of them stood together looking at each other. The bright and beautiful sunlight shone down from the sky, shining on the two of them. The two of them raised their heads to look at the sky in astonishment, and discovered that they had unknowingly stood in a vast and deep pit. The sun was at noon. Looking around, the door to the netherworld had disappeared, and the netherworld iron walls that were carved with countless skulls had also disappeared. The netherworld ghost flames, the surging magma, and even the netherworld hole formed by the netherworld iron had disappeared. It was as if the two of them had been transferred to a strange pit in an instant. A small insect that came out of nowhere fluttered its wings and flew between the two of them. The two of them stared at it without blinking. Perhaps the small insect was attracted by the bright colors, as it first flew towards Hong Tailong, who was dressed in red and danced between his eyes. Hong Tailong's eyes that were staring at it immediately turned into a cross-eyed look. The small insect circled around for a while before losing interest in Hong Tailong. It seemed to be more interested in Yu Qianqiu, and directly landed on Yu Qianqiu's face. Yu Qianqiu's eyes turned and he subconsciously gave a slap. It was a clear and resounding slap, causing his own face to feel pain. Hong Tailong stared at him in astonishment, while Yu Qianqiu's expression twitched. He raised his hand to take a look, and saw that the small insect had been slapped into pieces. The two of them looked at each other again and Hong Tailong weakly shouted, "Yu Qianqiu?" Yu Qianqiu was startled and immediately shouted, "Hong Tai Long?" The two of them heard each other's shout and looked at where they were standing. They were still in the same position as before the anomaly happened. They were not paralyzed on the ground at all. They moved their hands and feet and took a few steps forward. When the two of them got closer, they were touching and pinching each other like fools. Suddenly Yu Qianqiu gave Hong Tai Long a fierce slap on the face. Hong Tai Long covered his face and roared angrily, "What are you doing?" Yu Qianqiu picked his ears amidst the deafening roar and heaved a sigh of relief. "Damn it! He's really alive. That scared this old man to death. Where is this place?" He flew out as if nothing had happened. Not only was Hong Tai Long not angry, he was also pleasantly surprised when he came back to his senses, and flew out with him. The two of them stood at the edge of the huge crater and looked around. Hong Tai Long was not too familiar with this place, but Yu Qianqiu could recognize it. They were still within the desolate demonic ghost region, and the original territory of Ill Wind Valley had been completely dug away. He had no idea where it had been dug to. "Where is this?" Hong Tai Long asked, not daring to be sure. "We're still in the mortal realm where we're doing good deeds. You're right, the passageway to the netherworld has completely disappeared." Yu Qianqiu raised his head to look at the sun, and realized that the time had already changed from midnight to noon. However, the process that the two of them had experienced would definitely not exceed 4 hours, and it was a very strange experience. "Sigh. It's good that you're fine. I was almost scared to death. I've never encountered such a strange thing before." Hong Tai Long laughed and patted his chest in relief. After relaxing, he looked at Yu Qianqiu and asked, "What should we do next? Go to the immortal realm in the netherworld?" Yu Qianqiu nodded his head heavily, looked around and let out a long sigh and said, "The matters in this mortal realm are more or less settled. It's time to solve the problems in other places. Let's go." With a wave of his hand, the two of them disappeared at the same time. In the Divine Ruin Realm base, Hong Tai Long strolled around with his hands clasped behind his back. When everyone found out that he was the divine dragon that the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch rode back then, they looked at him with incomparable shock, especially Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng. When the two of them felt the powerful dragon aura on his body, they actually faintly felt uneasy and restless. However, when Hong Tai Long saw the pheasant standing on Wu Lishua's shoulder, he couldn't help but cry out in surprise, "Phoenix! So it's a dragon. Who are you? Why are you so noisy? I don't know you." The pheasant opened its eyes and choked him, then continued to stand on Wu Lishua's shoulder and closed its eyes to rest. Hong Tai Long was speechless. Originally he felt that he was quite high and mighty, but he didn't expect that there would even be a phoenix of the same level as him here. His sense of superiority was immediately dampened, and he immediately became more well-behaved, no longer showing off that he was a divine dragon. After Yu Qianqiu gathered the various leaders to inquire about the recent progress, he dragged Hong Tai Long to the Great Snowy Mountain in the Netherworld. Chapter 1177. In the Great Snow Mountain of the Underworld, deep in the snowy plains, there was an ice cliff glowing with icy blue light that had existed for countless years. Silver armor soldier, purple armor soldier, blue armor soldier, and red armor soldier paced back and forth in front of the ice palace's gate, as if guarding the gate. The ice souls inside the ice sculptures shone with brilliant colors. They looked helpless and melancholy, thinking about something. Thousand armor soldier. Demon King 3 Knight has led the army of Demon Dao back to the Three Realms. What do you think? Red armor soldier suddenly turned around and asked Silver armor soldier. Purple armor soldier and blue armor soldier turned around at the same time. He's already come out, what can I think? Silver armor soldier stopped in front of a carp ice sculpture. His gaze focused on the eyes of the ice sculpture. There were two black ice souls there. Red armor soldier slapped an ice pillar in the pavilion next to him and sighed. We took such a great risk to seal Demon King 3 Knight and the others back then. What a great price we paid. But now the Underworld Emperor has released them and we've become the dogs of Demon Dao again. Back then we risked our lives to seal the Demon Realm for the peace of the Three Realms. But now, soldier, you're thinking too much. Silver armor soldier looked at him coldly and said in a low voice, "The Underworld Emperor has his reasons for doing this." The other three were silent. Within the ice palace, Shui Linglong, who was wrapped in a furry fur coat, fell asleep peacefully again. However, her face still had a sickly flush. The Snow Emperor and Snow Empress both heaved a sigh of relief. They cupped their hands towards Bai Qi, who walked down from the ice bed and said, "Thank you, Emperor of the Underworld. We only talk about friendship, not thanks." Bai Qi smiled elegantly as he stepped on the ice barefoot. This is why I didn't expose our relationship even in the most difficult times. If I really want to thank you, my 4 brothers should be the one thanking you for taking care of them. Underworld Emperor, you're too kind. The Snow Empress shook her head and smiled bitterly. The true Samadhi fire in Linglong's body is getting harder and harder to suppress. If the Emperor of the Underworld hadn't arrived in time and used his profound cultivation to suppress it, we wouldn't know what to do. The Snow Empress sat quietly beside her daughter. Bai Qi looked at Shui Linglong, who was sleeping peacefully, and nodded with a serious expression. Seems like it's getting more and more serious each time. Don't worry, if you need anything, just look for me. I'll be there anytime. I'll look for an opportunity to borrow the power of the Devil's Path to find the fire spirit of the 5 great spirits of heaven and earth. Hopefully, I'll be able to remove the Samadhi true fire from Linglong's body in one fell swoop. The Snow Emperor and Snow Empress looked at each other. They wanted to say something but hesitated. The Snow Emperor could not help but ask, I heard that the Emperor of the Underworld has released the Demon Lord of 3 Nights and the others? Bai Qi hesitated for a moment. He said, I understand your worries, but you can rest assured. Demon Monarch 3 Nights has already promised me that I will still represent the Underworld and the Demonic Path Army will not harass you. As for the outside world, you and your wife have never cared about worldly affairs. The changes outside have nothing to do with you. The Great Snow Mountain is still your Great Snow Mountain. I'm just afraid that you won't be able to make the decision when the time comes. The Snow Emperor sighed in his heart. However, there was nothing he could do. He smiled awkwardly and said, Thank you, Emperor of the Underworld. Bai Qi could guess what they were thinking. However, he was also in a difficult position. He still smiled warmly and said, All right. My 4 brothers have troubled you for a long time. I'm here to bring them away with me. We'll meet again in the future. The couple hurriedly sent him off. The 3 of them walked him all the way to the entrance of the Ice Palace. Silver Armor 1,000 soldiers and the other 3 also came over to express their gratitude to the couple. Both sides had their own matters on their minds. After exchanging some pleasantries, they were about to leave. Bai Qi and the others had just turned around when they all froze on the spot. Even the Snow Emperor and Snow Empress were no exception. 2 figures suddenly appeared on the ice cliff. Yu Qianshou and Hong Tailong were startled when they saw Bai Qi and the others. Hong Tailong suddenly laughed wildly and said, You can wear out iron shoes in fruitless searching, but you'll find what you're looking for without even looking for it. Bai Qi, I didn't expect to see us here. Hong Tailong. The 5 of them trembled and exclaimed in unison. Bai Qi was even more shocked as he said, You're not dead yet? Although the Snow Emperor and Snow Empress knew Yu Qianshou, they didn't know Hong Tailong. Seeing how shocked Bai Qi and the others were, in addition to Hong Tailong's tone, the couple instantly felt that something was amiss. Hong Tailong laughed loudly and said, What a joke! What can a mere spirit-severing smoke do to me? Bai Qi, you probably didn't expect to see me again even in your dreams. Where is Jean Tyron? Let's settle the score today. Bai Qi suddenly turned around and looked at the Snow Emperor and Snow Empress coldly. You 2 betrayed me? A murderous intent appeared on his face. The couple hurriedly waved their hands and explained, Emperor of the Underworld, you've misunderstood. Why would we betray you? Then how did they know I was here? Bai Qi shouted sternly. The Silver Armor 1,000 soldiers and the other 3 also looked at the couple with murderous intent. The Snow Emperor immediately smiled bitterly at Yu Qianshou and said, Yu Qianshou, why didn't you come earlier or later? Why did you come at this time? My husband and I can't even explain ourselves. Yu Qianshou was here to exchange for the Xian Ming soul refining technique. How could he let anything happen to the couple? He immediately laughed harshly and said, Bai Qi, it really has nothing to do with them. I know them and came to visit them when I was passing by. I didn't expect to see you here. You heartless bastard. You actually dared to collude with that bastard Yan Zhuixing to kill me? Today it's time to settle the score. Actually, there was no need to explain. Bai Qi was just angry for a moment. Thinking about the shocked reactions of Hong Tailong and Yu Qianshou, they obviously didn't expect to see him here. He immediately laughed coldly and said, With just the 2 of you? His gaze swept around as if he was worried that someone else would appear. The silver-armored soldier brandished his halberd, the purple-armored soldier brandished his scythe, the blue-armored soldier brandished his blue bow and arrow, and the red-armored soldier loosened his grip on the red-armored soldier's red chain. The 4 of them immediately stood in a straight line on either side of the battlefield. The Snow Empress and her husband smiled bitterly. It was obvious that the red old man wasn't someone to be trifled with. If the two groups fought, the ice palace would probably be destroyed. The Snow Empress gave a look to the Snow Empress, and the Snow Empress left hurriedly. It was more important to protect her unconscious daughter. With this, Yu Qianqiu took out the golden heaven and earth splitting arrow and stabbed it into the icy ground in front of him. Everyone's eyes turned cold at the same time. A cold smile gradually appeared on the corner of Bai Qi's mouth, and he said, "The heaven and earth splitting arrow is in your hands. It seems like the Myriad Swords Demon Lord is really dead. You scared me." It would have been fine if Bai Qi didn't mention the Myriad Swords Demon Lord. The moment Bai Qi mentioned the Myriad Swords Demon Lord, Hong Tailong immediately let out a wild roar and charged over. Bai Qi turned into a stream of light and shot into the sky, and Hong Tailong chased after him. The sky rumbled, and a white figure and a red figure entangled with each other. The two of them directly engaged in a fierce battle. The heaven and earth splitting arrow on the icy cliff instantly exploded into tens of thousands of divine arrows, and they shot toward the four netherworld generals like a torrential rain. Yu Qianqiu was now extremely courageous, and he dared to take the initiative to fight the four netherworld generals head-on. As expected, he didn't panic because he had the goods in his hands. Reckless fellow. The Silver Armor Army's cold laughter was still reverberating, but the four of them had already teleported and disappeared from their original spots. The attacks of the tens of thousands of divine swords immediately missed. It was unknown when the Silver Armor Army, the Red Armor Army, and the Purple Armor Army had appeared behind Yu Qianqiu, and they surrounded him. All of them had cold smiles on their faces, and the shadow of the halberd filled the sky. The shadow of the death god's scythe swept across Yu Qianqiu's waist, and the shadow of the red chain lashed out. With the cultivation of these three people, if Yu Qianqiu was hit by any one of them, he would immediately have to say goodbye to this world. Especially since the Blue Armor Army in the sky had already drawn their soul-slaying bows. If Yu Qianqiu was lucky enough to escape, the soul-slaying bows would immediately teach him a lesson. Asterisk boom asterisk the tens of thousands of divine swords all shot into the enormous icy mountain. The icy mountain shook and countless cracks appeared on it. The Snow Empress directly dove into the ice on the ground to hide. At almost the same time that the four of them disappeared, Yu Qianqiu let out a furious roar, and his entire body exploded with a ferocious seven-colored flame. In an instant, it covered a radius of 1,000 meters. A ray of seven-colored light that illuminated the heaven and earth was like a resplendent pearl, blooming with gorgeous colors in the vast snowy mountain. Bai Qi, who was fighting fiercely with Hong Tailong, was already quite shocked. He actually discovered that Hong Tailong's cultivation was far stronger than before. Because he didn't know that the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch had used the Divine Dragon Empowerment technique to return half of Hong Tailong's cultivation to him before he died, he didn't have the time to notice that Hong Tailong had already made the first move. In addition, Hong Tailong's dragon body, which belonged to the dragon race, was extremely resistant to attacks. He actually withstood the black light shot out by the obsidian light mirror without caring about anything else. He only attacked without defending, completely throwing caution to the wind. It was as if he was fighting with his life on the line. Bai Qi really couldn't endure his opponent's ferocious attacks. Just when Bai Qi was preparing to endure a little longer and wait for the Silver Armor Army and the other three to kill Yu Qianqiu, they would come over to help relieve the pressure on Bai Qi. Suddenly, he caught a glimpse of the huge seven-colored flame blossoming below, and immediately cried out in surprise, "True Samadhi fire!" Taking advantage of Bai Qi's daze, Hong Tailong seized the opportunity to launch a sneak attack. He opened his mouth and two rays of golden light shot out. Two dragon binding chains, one bound Bai Qi's legs and the other bound his upper body. In the blink of an eye, Bai Qi was tied up tightly. No matter how hard Bai Qi struggled, he couldn't escape. Bai Qi was instantly scared out of his wits. Hong Tailong angrily shouted, "Violent dragon fist!" Countless monstrous fist shadows gathered at one point and violently smashed onto Bai Qi's body. Bai Qi couldn't even let out a scream as he violently vomited blood. Boom! A huge deep pit was formed on the vast snowy ground. Hong Tailong rushed into the deep pit on the ground and didn't stop there. True Samadhi fire! The Silver Armor Army and the other three cried out in surprise before Bai Qi. They were caught off guard and were engulfed by the exploding seven-colored flame. The Blue Armor Heavenly Soldier had his bow drawn in the air, and since he was standing a little further away, he was able to dodge the attack with instantaneous movement. However, the Silver Armor Army and the other two who attacked Bai Qi were unlucky. They repeatedly teleported to avoid the flames that were chasing after them. After much difficulty, they finally escaped the flames that were chasing after them. However, they discovered that the weapons they attacked were stained with true samadhi fire. This true fire could refine anything. Once it was stained, it would be a huge problem. They couldn't extinguish it no matter how hard they tried. They immediately threw away their weapons without hesitation, and the three treasures became useless on the spot. Chapter 1178. The iceberg where the ice palace was located melted instantly, not into water but into steam. Wherever the true samadhi fire reached and even further away, was filled with smoke and mist. The blue-armored celestial soldier who had just fled immediately noticed Bai Chi's terrible condition. He cried out in grief, "Emperor of Netherworld." He turned around and shot the soul-slaying arrow at Hong Tailong, who was beating Bai Chi. Yu Qianqiu was nowhere to be seen amidst the rapidly dispersing mist and the colorful flame. But suddenly Yu Qianqiu's furious roar rang out, "Kill!" Tens of thousands of golden specks of light shot out from the blazing flames, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. In order to save the Emperor of the Underworld, the blue-armored celestial soldiers who had drawn their bows and shot arrows furiously didn't care about their own lives. Instead of dodging the rain-like attacks of the divine swords, they braced themselves and turned around to shoot the arrow at Hong Tailong. As soon as the arrow was shot out, a dozen indestructible golden light specks pierced through his body, almost turning him into a sieve. The soul-slaying bow in his hand was cut into a few pieces by the rapidly piercing divine swords, making a buzzing noise as the bowstring was broken. Tens of blood spurted out from the blue-armored celestial soldier's body. Although he tried to choke back something with a reluctant expression, he still choked out a mouthful of blood. His head tilted to one side and he fell straight down to the snowland below. Silver-armored celestial soldier and his two companions, who had hastily dodged the divine swords, turned around and saw this scene. Immediately they let out a deafening howl, "Celestial army!" At this moment Hong Tailong dashed out from the deep crater with a bloody man in his hand. The soul-slaying arrow brushed past his shoulder. Boom! The ground shook and the snowland cracked. The colorful flame covering 1,000 meters on the snowland shrank rapidly, and a man made of fire dashed out. Behind him, tens of thousands of golden light specks circled like a shoal of fish in the ocean. Hong Tailong carried Bai Chi, who was already on the verge of death. His white clothes dyed in blood, and was still tightly bound by the dragon-binding rope. He flashed to Yu Qianqiu's side, handed him over and said, "Take him, I've already sealed his cultivation." Then he turned to look at the three dumbfounded people in the distance and sneered, "Leave those three fellows who helped the evildoer to me." Yu Qianqiu retracted his true samadhi fire and reached out to grab the dragon-binding rope. He looked coldly at Bai Chi, who was beaten up beyond recognition, and casually lifted him up. He wouldn't have the slightest bit of sympathy for him. This was a life-and-death battle. If he lost today, his ending wouldn't be any better. Other than death, they might even hand him over to Yan Zhuixing. That was why it was said that showing mercy to the enemy was equivalent to committing suicide. "Wait!" Yu Qianqiu called out to Hong Tailong. His eyes narrowed as he swept a glance at the three people in the distance. He felt a little strange in his heart. If the three of them had split up and fled, Hong Tailong might not have been able to capture all of them. It would already be good if he could capture two of them. However, the three of them did not flee. Instead, they were looking at him with grief and indignation. Hong Tailong looked at him in confusion and asked, "Are we going to let them go?" Yu Qianqiu didn't reply to him. He stretched out his other hand and a divine sword flashed into his hand. He placed the sword on Bai Chi's neck expressionlessly and shouted at the three people, "If anyone dares to flee, I will immediately cut off his head. If you don't want him to die, then obediently surrender. I can consider letting you guys live." "No." Hong Tailong roared angrily, "I can let them go, but he must die." He pointed his finger at Bai Chi. From the looks of it, he still held a grudge against Yi Tiankong. "Why don't I hand him over to you and you can do whatever you want to do? After you're done, you can go back to your hometown and I'll go do my own thing. From now on, we won't have anything to do with each other?" Yu Qianqiu looked at him and sneered. Hong Tailong clenched his fists tightly and angrily turned his head away. "Yu Qianqiu, you have to keep your word." The silver-armored army of 1,000 soldiers' sorrowful voice came from afar. "I, Yu Qianqiu, am famous for being a man of my word. What I say is already set in stone. Have you ever heard of me, Yu Qianqiu, going back on my word?" Yu Qianqiu grabbed Bai Chi and placed the sword on his neck. He shouted back, "As long as you guys answer my questions honestly and promise to serve me from now on, I can let you guys go." The silver-armored army of 1,000 soldiers and the other two looked at each other with a bitter smile, then nodded in unison and slowly flew over. Yu Qianzhou tilted his head and said, "Hong Tai Long. Go seal their cultivation bases." Seeing the three flying over, Bai Qi's eyes, which had already lost focus, once again lit up. His chest, which had almost been smashed, suddenly heaved up and down, and a large mouthful of blocked blood spurted out of his mouth. Staring at the three flying over with bloodshot eyes, he desperately roared in pain, "Run! Run! Don't worry about me. Don't believe his nonsense. Hurry up and go. I beg you guys." Yu Qianzhou didn't stop Bai Qi from shouting. He pretended to be merciful to the three people. The three people looked at Bai Qi's pitiful appearance. Who could have imagined that the emperor of the underworld, who was so graceful in the underworld royal palace, would end up like this? The three men, who were made of iron, instantly burst into tears. They stubbornly shook their heads and refused. It was the first time in their lives that they refused the emperor of the underworld's command. They didn't expect it to be under such circumstances. The three people didn't leave. Instead they sped up and flew over. Bai Qi's face instantly swelled and tears of blood came out of his eyes. He screamed in pain, "Don't come over. Run." His voice was so miserable that it was like a ghost being thrown into a pot of boiling oil. Originally Hong Tai Long hated Bai Qi to the bone. However, when he saw that Bai Qi was willing to give up his only hope of survival for the sake of his subordinates, he could not help but be moved. He cast a deep look at Bai Qi, who was crying tears of blood, and teleported to the front of Silver Armor Army and the other two without any hesitation. With a lightning-fast move, he quickly sealed their cultivations and brought them over. Seeing that the situation was under control, Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and put away the 10,000 swords as one. He carried Bai Qi, who was badly mutilated, and landed on the ice field and threw him to the ground. Hong Tai Long also threw the three people to the ground. The three people climbed up and wanted to help Bai Qi, who was still being helped. However, their cultivation was sealed, and they couldn't help Bai Qi, who was weighed down by the dragon binding rope. They fell down one by one, climbed up one by one, and fell down one by one. At this moment, the ice mountain that the ice palace was built on had melted. The Snow Emperor and Snow Empress, who had hidden far away, also came back. The Snow Empress was still carrying her unconscious daughter. The two of them were also frightened by the fierce battle, but Yu Qianzhou's true Samadhi fire attracted them. Once the battle ended, they immediately rushed back. They saw hope to save their daughter because Yu Qianzhou had promised them. "Let him go. We have already stretched out our necks to be killed. You have already sealed his cultivation, why don't you let him go?" The Silver Armor Army roared at Hong Tai Long, "Even if you want to kill him, there is no need to treat him like this. He was once the supreme emperor of the Netherworld, and he has his own dignity. At least when the Myriad Swords Demon Lord died, no one humiliated him." The three people were really powerless to help Bai Qi up. Without their cultivation, the ice under their feet was slippery. There was no expression on Hong Tai Long's face. For some unknown reason, he actually opened his mouth and swallowed the dragon binding rope that was binding Bai Qi back into his stomach. Without the weight of the dragon binding rope, Bai Qi choked out another mouthful of blood when the three people helped him up. He looked at the three people and shook his head with boundless grief and indignation. "Why are you all so stupid? We have no value to him now. Do you all really think that he will let us go? We know that there is no way out." The Purple Armor Army suddenly laughed bitterly and said, "But we are already used to going through life and death with you. We have been like this for so many years. Moreover, all of our lives were saved by you. You have never let us down and you have always treated us well. How can we bear to leave you behind?" Bai Qi closed his eyes and tears of blood flowed out from his eyes. Suddenly, he opened his eyes angrily and tilted his head to look at Yu Qianzhou. He gritted his teeth and said, "Yu Qianzhou, what will make you let them go?" Yu Qianzhou looked at him coldly and didn't answer his question. Instead, he said indifferently, "Actually, before you attacked me that time, I didn't have any ill will towards you. I just don't understand. Could it be that just because Mu Yuanzi injured you, you're going to open the demon world and let all the beings of the three realms die with you?" Bai Qi's struggling body softened, and he lay in the arms of the Silver Armor Army of 1,000 soldiers. He laughed wildly and said, "Why? I also want to know why. I once led my subordinates to risk their lives for the sake of all living beings in the three realms. I risked my life to seal the demon realm with King Jintai. For the sake of all living beings in the three realms, I've always suppressed Kim Tae and prevented him from acting recklessly. For so many years I've always warned Kim Tae that if he dared to disturb the balance of the three realms, I would lead the heroes of the netherworld to beat him up. Otherwise, do you think that inhumane fellow would really treat everyone in the world as humans? Let me ask you, who has ever heard of the three realms not being in chaos for 100,000 years? But why? Bai Chi retorted angrily, why do I have to bear the retribution for Master Jin's evil deed of killing the entire Wu family? Why did Mu Yuanzi injure me instead of dealing with the main culprit? Why do all the beings in the three realms turn against me when I'm working for the welfare of the three realms? Not a single person, not even a single person stood out to speak for me. Since the entire world is filled with heartless people, if I don't see rivers of heartless people's blood flow, why should I live in sorrow? Why should I die in sorrow? Then let me tell you why. Because there is no why. No matter how good you think you are, it's all because you think you are. Everything is retribution. If you can't figure it out, you can slowly think about it in your next life. Yu Qianqiu said as he took out a divine sword. Hong Tailong was slightly startled. Didn't you want to let him go? Why does it look like you want to kill me? Little did he know that Yu Qianqiu and the Silver Armor army of 1,000 soldiers were negotiating terms because he didn't want to leave behind any future troubles that might suddenly pop up one day to take revenge. Thus, he purposely led the three of them to surrender so that they wouldn't slip through the net. To him, if he didn't kill a single one and let them all go, then he would be a good person. Since he was going to kill them, he would have to eliminate them completely. Moreover, Bai Chi was already a member of the Devil Dao. He had once sworn to the heavens at the 1,000-mile lake that he would exterminate the Devil Dao and sacrifice all living beings in the demon domain. Chapter 1179. Right at this moment, the Snow Empress suddenly flashed over. She braced herself and cupped her hands with a bitter smile. I know you want the Shenming soul refining technique. If you let go of the Emperor of the Underworld, I am willing to give it to you. The Snow Empress, who was carrying Shui Linglong, looked at them worriedly. She was afraid that her husband had angered Yu Qianqiu. After all, Hong Tailong and Yu Qianqiu were very powerful, especially Yu Qianqiu's Samadhi True Fire, which was the nemesis of the couple's cultivation method. More importantly, she was afraid that angering Yu Qianqiu would mean giving up the chance to cure her daughter. However, they were indebted to Bai Chi. Although she felt uncomfortable holding back some words, she couldn't say them out loud. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the couple, then slowly raised the divine sword in his hand and gently caressed the glowing edge of the sword. Snow Emperor, we had an agreement. I saved your daughter's life, and you gave me the Shenming soul refining technique in exchange. Now you want to use it to exchange for Bai Chi's life. You better think carefully. The Shenming soul refining technique can only exchange for one person's life. Whether it is Bai Chi or your daughter, it's up to you. The Snow Emperor lowered his head solemnly. The Snow Empress looked at her daughter in her arms, then at her husband, her face full of anxiety. Bai Chi struggled for a while and the three understood and helped him up. Facing the Snow Emperor, Bai Chi was very gratified and nodded. I appreciate Brother Snow's righteousness. With Brother Snow's words, I can die without regrets. My friendship with Brother Snow was not in vain. However, the four of us are destined to live and die together today. I will not live alone or it will be worse than death. So, please don't interfere in this matter. This has nothing to do with you and your wife. Emperor of the Underworld. The Snow Emperor wanted to say something, but Bai Chi had already turned to look at Yu Qianqiu, who was ignoring him, and sighed, I didn't expect this. Yu Qianqiu, who didn't even dare to speak loudly in front of me, was now in control of my life and death. It seems that the Saintess is indeed a prophet. I had already vaguely figured out some of it, but in the end I still made a mistake. I can't blame others for my fate. You're right, everything is retribution. Netherworld Saintess? Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and lowered the sword in his hand. He tilted his head and asked, She told you about me? A bitter smile appeared on Bai Chi's bloody face, and his eyes became blurry. He recalled the conversation he had with the Underworld Saintess in the small courtyard of the Dark Royal Palace. He closed his eyes slightly and said, Yu Qianqiu, back then I wanted to kill you first. Killing me today is my retribution. However, I treated you well back then. Promise me one thing. Yu Qianqiu frowned and said faintly, Let's hear it first. Now that things had come to this, he wouldn't give in so easily. A warm expression appeared on Bai Chi's face as he said, Don't let the news of my death spread. That's all I want. Yu Qianqiu was startled. He asked with some surprise, You're already dead, yet you still care about the waves behind you. I want to know why. Is it worth it for me to promise you? Wan Ling's figure appeared in Bai Qi's mind. He had protected the entire 10,000 holy palace from the Demon King 3 nights. After rescuing Wan Ling, he and Wan Ling had an intimate time together. When they parted, he had said that he would come back to pick her up after finishing his business. Who would have thought that it would be an eternal farewell? He let out a soft sigh and closed his eyes as he replied, "If she doesn't know that I'm dead, she will naturally live on. I have nothing left for her. The only thing I can give her now is to give her the hope to live on." Everyone else was confused, but Yu Qianqiu seemed to be deep in thought. He had already linked it to Wan Ling. He paused and said, "I can promise you this. I originally wanted to use the Xianming soul refining technique to refine you all into profound weapons. As you said, on account of the kindness you have shown me, I will give the 4 of you a quick death. From now on, the grudges between us will be resolved, and we will not owe each other anything." As soon as he finished speaking, a golden light flashed in his hand. With 4 pu-pu sounds, 4 heads bounced up and fell to the ground. Warm blood spurted out from their mouths. The 4 corpses fell to the ground and twitched for a while before they stopped moving. The blood that flowed out from the severed heads quickly solidified on the icy ground. Hong Tai Long looked at Yu Qianqiu as he silently put away the divine sword in his hand. Previously he had thought that he would let them go. He didn't expect that he would not leave a single one alive. Hong Tai Long wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. The Snow Empress and her husband looked at Bai Qi's corpse dumbfoundedly. Suddenly, a ball of 7-colored flames swept across, and there was nothing left on the ground. Even the blood had turned into ashes. Yu Qianqiu turned around and walked towards the husband and wife. He stopped in front of the Snow Empress who was carrying Shui Linglong, and said indifferently, "Snow Empress, I have always remembered the promise I made in the past. Today I have come to fulfill it." He stretched out his 5 claws and grabbed toward Shui Linglong. Not long after, a strand of 7-colored flame that was not much thicker than a strand of hair emerged from Shui Linglong's body. It was this little fellow that caused the Snow Empress and her husband to be helpless even with all their efforts. That strand of flame drilled into Yu Qianqiu's palm. Shui Linglong, who was still unconscious, let out a soft moan. Her body that was being carried moved slightly, and the sickly redness on her cheeks gradually disappeared. The husband and wife looked at their daughter who was recovering quickly, but they didn't feel the slightest bit happy. The Snow Empress raised her head and saw that Yu Qianqiu was staring at her with a burning gaze. She couldn't help but smile bitterly and shake her head. She took out a jade archive and quickly inserted something into it, then flicked it out. Yu Qianqiu casually caught the jade archive and examined it. After thinking for a long time, he nodded slightly and said, "So that's how it is. I understand now." The jade archive was immediately crushed into pieces. In fact, the Xianming soul refining technique wasn't a technique that required a large amount of time to practice. It was a technique that condensed all of the opponent's cultivation into the essence of the technique and used it. It required a spiritual object that was connected to the user so that the user could control it. No matter what type of spiritual object was used, the user would need the same type as the medium to unleash its power. This was the reason why the Snow Empress said that Yu Qianqiu couldn't practice without absorbing the fire spirit. After understanding the secret of the Xianming soul refining technique, Yu Qianqiu was confident that he could use it on the 5 elements of water, fire, metal, wood, and earth. Of course, the prerequisite was that he had to swallow all 5 spirits of heaven and earth. The Snow Empress would never have imagined that Yu Qianqiu had mastered all 5 elements of the technique. This was also the reason why Yu Qianqiu was so interested in the Xianming soul refining technique. As long as he mastered it, he would be able to summon an almost unkillable dark soldier in any terrain in the future. The Snow Empress and her husband didn't have anything to be happy about when their daughter's worries were resolved. They held their daughter and left with flagging interest. Now that the ice palace was destroyed, they suffered a great loss. The ice soul, mysterious ice, which was refined by many experts, was destroyed by Yu Qianqiu's Samadhi true fire. But they didn't say anything and left. They wanted to find a suitable place to rebuild the ice palace in the snowy mountain. After today's scene, they saw Yu Qianqiu's ruthlessness. It was hard for them, who had always been aloof from worldly affairs, to accept it. They probably didn't want to have anything to do with Yu Qianqiu anymore. At least in their opinion, Bai Qi was much more affectionate and righteous. Yu Qianqiu stood silently on the ice field and watched the couple leave. He stood for a long time in the howling cold wind. After a long time he looked up at the dark night sky and sighed. I thought I would become friends with them, but I knew it was impossible when I decided to kill Bai Qi. All these years, in order to do some things, I gained a lot, but I also lost too many precious things. What is the most precious? The human heart is the most precious. The people I was familiar with left me one by one. Some died, some left, and there's no turning back. Maybe when I gain more, I will also lose more. Hong Tailong also couldn't accept the fact that he killed Bai Qi and the other 3 people. Although he was the one who shouted the loudest to kill Bai Qi, after hearing Yu Qianzhou's sigh, he seemed to understand his helplessness. After all, which person didn't have a story behind them? Everyone had been honest before, and maybe everyone had a touching story. But this was a life and death cultivation. There was more than one person like Bai Qi in the world, who could carry so many burdens on their shoulders. If they didn't get rid of them quickly, there would only be more and more burdens and nothing could be done. Just as Hong Tailong was about to say a few words of consolation, he discovered that Yu Qianzhou took a deep breath and became spirited again. He immediately came back to life from his loneliness and disappeared in a flash. His recovery speed was too fast. It was as if he was a completely different person, as if nothing had happened earlier. After Yu Qianzhou searched around the icy plains, he found Bai Qi's treasure, the obsidian underworld light mirror. He tried to control it, but discovered that it was impervious to fire and water. Even his divine sense couldn't penetrate it. It seemed like there was no possibility for him to control it. Hong Tailong flashed to his side and sneered, "Don't try any more. The obsidian underworld light mirror is the symbol of the netherworld's supreme ruler. Other than meditation cultivators, no one from the outside world is able to control it." "There's such a strange thing?" Yu Qianzhou flipped it around and looked at it. Then he put it away with some regret. This thing could communicate with each other through a video call. It was a pity that he couldn't use such a high-grade treasure. Where should we go now? To sweep across the demonic path's army in the netherworld, or to slaughter in the immortal realm? Hong Tailong rubbed his palms together. He couldn't wait to prove to the 3 realms that he, Hong Tailong, had returned. Yu Qianzhou lowered his head and calculated for a while. He muttered to himself, "Looking at the time, it's about time. I wonder if that fellow Xinyu will keep his promise." Then he suddenly raised his head and said, "My master doesn't know about the human realm being sealed. I want to report to him first." "Your master? Where?" Hong Tailong was stunned. Yu Qianzhou had already waved his hand, and the 2 of them disappeared from where they stood. By the netherworld river beside the myriad heavens boundary barrier, the 2 of them appeared. Hong Tailong quickly looked around and asked hesitantly, "This is? You're finally here?" A woman's clear voice rang out. The 2 of them looked at the other side of the river. The netherworld saintess slowly walked out from the ground. It seemed like she had opened up an underground space for herself. Hong Tailong was a little surprised and wanted to ask, "Is this your master?" Yu Qianzhou was also a little surprised as he asked, "Why are you here?" Chapter 1180. However, what surprised him even more was that Xinyu also walked out of the cave, smiled awkwardly at him and curiously looked at Hong Tailong. Then he flew over with the underworld saintess. Seeing that Xinyu kept his promise, Yu Qianzhou was relieved, but he was a little puzzled as to why the 2 of them were together. He couldn't help but ask, "Why are you 2 together?" Xinyu said embarrassedly, "I came here a few days in advance to wait for you. Who knew that I would also meet Miss Xian here, so we waited for you here together." "Taishu Xian is also waiting for me? Could it be that her ability to predict the future had reached such a level? Or is it a coincidence?" Just as Yu Qianzhou showed some doubts on his face, Taishu Xian, whose face was covered with a black veil, suddenly sighed faintly and asked, "You really came here? In that case, Bai Qi didn't escape the calamity after all." Hong Tailong, who was already confused, was even more puzzled. The 2 of them came here in the blink of an eye. How did she know that Bai Qi had encountered a calamity? Yu Qianzhou didn't dare to underestimate her. He had a deeper understanding of this woman's divine foresight. However, because he had promised Bai Qi not to leak the news that he was dead, a confused look appeared on his face as he asked, "What do you mean Bai Qi didn't escape the calamity? What happened to Bai Qi?" Hong Tailong immediately turned his head and rolled his eyes. Taishu Xian looked deeply at Yu Qianzhou and shook his head slightly. "Bai Qi and I were friends and I couldn't bear to see him suffer a tragedy. I originally wanted him to use you to defy the heavens and change his fate. I also thought that he understood. Now it seems that the 2 of you didn't get along after all. It's really hard to defy the heavens' will." Yu Qianzhou's eyes flickered. He wanted to say something but hesitated for a while. In the end he still said with a blank look, "What do you mean? Why don't I understand?" Tai Shu Xian saw that he was deliberately acting dumb, so he didn't linger on this topic. He quietly turned around and said, I have been waiting for you here for a long time. Since you want to go inside the celestial boundary, why don't we go together? What? The celestial barrier of the mausoleum of the gods? Hong Tai Long looked around in shock, while Yu Qianzhou glanced at Xin Yu meaningfully as if he was asking, did you say that? Feeling guilty, Jiu Yu turned around and flashed into the river. He transformed into a giant clam and opened his shell to wait for the three of them to come in. Tai Shu Xian was the first to enter in a flash, followed by Yu Qianzhou. Hong Tai Long still had a shocked expression on his face as he glanced left and right before following behind them. The huge clamshell closed up, and it quickly swam upstream in the Netherworld River. When the few of them came out of the clamshell again, they had already arrived at the cliff within the boundary of all heavens. Hong Tai Long stared at the huge moon with his mouth agape. Tai Shu Xian seemed a little excited to return to this place. He didn't greet the crowd and immediately flew in the direction of his home. Yu Qianzhou took out a flying shuttle and let Hong Tai Long drive it. He brought along Jiu Yu and caught up with Tai Shu Xian in the blink of an eye. They carried her and quickly disappeared into the distance. When they arrived at the small courtyard on the monster-like mountain, Tai Shu Xian couldn't wait any longer and flashed down. White-haired Grandma Yen walked out of the house and saw her. She immediately called out with a trembling voice, Little Xian. Tai Shu Xian quickly walked over and knelt down on the spot. She hugged Grandma Yan's leg and cried, Grandma, Xianer is back. After Grandma Yen helped her up and checked on her, the two of them hugged each other and cried. As they cried, they asked each other something and completely ignored the three people who walked in after them. After a long while, the two women who looked like a grandparent and granddaughter finally stopped crying. When Grandma Yen saw Yu Qianzhou, she wiped her tears and let go of Tai Shu Xian. She walked to him and bowed, Yu Qianzhou, this old woman thanks you. She was thanking him for bringing back Tai Shu Xian who had disappeared for so many years. You can't do that. Yu Qianzhou hurriedly held her. Grandma Yen didn't stand on ceremony. She pulled his hand and led him into the house. She then waved at the other two people and said, Come in, come in, come in, everyone come in. Grandma Yen, you don't have to be so polite. Yu Qianzhou persuaded her and said seriously, I still have something to do, so I won't disturb you this time. I'll visit Grandma next time. He suddenly thought of something and asked respectfully, By the way, Grandma, have you heard any news about my master recently? Hong Tai Long's ears pricked up. He looked at Yu Qianzhou with a stunned expression and pondered in his heart. Could this guy's master be in the mausoleum of the god of sin? Your master? Grandma Yen was also stunned. Then she came to a sudden realization and said, You're asking about that green-robed madman, right? Yu Qianzhou's expression twitched. The so-called green-robed madman shouldn't be anyone else. He then coughed dryly and said, From what Grandma said, you seem to have news about my master? Grandma Yen also felt that her choice of words was a little inappropriate, but she still frowned and nodded with a solemn expression. She said, I do know, but you must not let the others here know that he is your master. Otherwise, I'm afraid it will bring you trouble. Yu Qianzhou's expression twitched again. He guessed that the old man had done something that angered the heavens and the people again. So he asked weakly, Grandma, can you explain it clearly? What exactly happened? Sigh. Grandma Yen sighed and shook her head. She said, Your master killed old man Meng? That's not all. He provoked the other tomb guards one after another. As a result, many of them were angered by him. So, more than 100 of them joined forces and finally beat him up until he was seriously injured. Who knew that after he escaped into the boundary of heavens to recuperate, he would not stop. After he came out, he killed 60 to 70 minor god-level cultivators in a row. Dozens of them were seriously injured and luckily escaped with their lives. In the end, a tomb guard with the cultivation of an early-stage great god was alarmed. He and your master fought fiercely for a day and a night. In the end, the two of them were evenly matched. Both of them were seriously injured and had to retreat. Your master has not come out to cause trouble for a long time. He has been recuperating in the boundary of heavens. Although everyone can see him, they can't break into the boundary of heavens. So they can't do anything to him. Yu Qianzhou was speechless for a while. He realized that the old man was getting more and more reckless. He dared to challenge a group of god-level experts alone. Was it fun to be seriously injured for no reason? It was simply unreasonable. The others were also speechless. After the shock, Tai Shu Xian's eyes flickered. No one knew what he was thinking. Xin Yu seemed to have heard of this before. He was speechless. Hong Tailong looked at Yu Qianshou as if he was looking at a monster. Never in his dreams would he have thought that Yu Qianshou had such an awesome master. Grandma Yen paused for a while and smiled bitterly. Now, the people in the cemetery of the God of Tombs are in a state of panic because of your master. No one knows when he will come out to cause trouble again. Everyone is spreading the news, hoping to unite to deal with your master. Sigh. Back then, if it wasn't for last Xian who divined for me and told me not to get involved in the matters outside, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to escape from your master's hands. I just don't understand. What is your master trying to do? Everyone here is a group of people who stand aloof from worldly affairs. Why would he want to disturb the peace here? No one is provoking him. That, Yu Qianshou blushed with shame. Finally, he gritted his teeth and said, "There's something wrong with the old man's head. Don't lower yourself to his level." Grandma Yen immediately said angrily, "Who wants to lower themselves to his level? We really don't want to lower ourselves to his level, and we can't wait to stay away from him. But he insisted on coming to our door, and we can't leave the cemetery of the God of Tombs. What do you want us to do?" Yu Qianshou also smiled bitterly. The old man was still resolutely striving for a higher and stronger goal. It seemed that he had never wavered in that thought. Yu Qianshou didn't know what to say. Seeing that the atmosphere was a little awkward, Taishu Xian immediately came forward to resolve it. "Grandma, I want to pay my respects to Father and Grandfather Moon God." Grandma Yen glanced at her and understood what she was thinking. She didn't linger on this topic anymore. She shook her head and walked out with the help of Taishu Xian. "Ahem. Since they are elders, I should pay my respects." Yu Qianshou followed out with some guilt. Then he cursed in his heart. "Damn it. I didn't do the wicked things that the old man did. Why should I feel guilty?" Hong Tailong and Xin Yu looked at each other and followed out. In front of the tombs of Taishu Zheng and the moon god, Taishu Xian knelt down and kowtowed sincerely. He was even muttering something. Yu Qianshou bowed repeatedly to the tombstones. Xin Yu followed suit. Hong Tailong crossed his arms and followed suit. Taishu Zheng didn't know who it was. When he saw the tomb of the moon god, he muttered, "So the moon god is buried here too." Grandma Yin saw that he was being disrespectful and naturally couldn't stand it. But when she realized that she couldn't see through his cultivation, she couldn't help but mock. "Do you know my husband?" Hong Tailong turned around and was stunned. After he reacted, he said disapprovingly, "The moon god. I heard of him when I was in the divine realm." "You are?" Grandma Yen was stunned. She glanced at them and asked in confusion, "You are also from the divine realm? Why haven't I seen you before? May I know your name?" She mistakenly thought that Hong Tailong was a tomb guard in the divine tomb cemetery. "It's not strange that you haven't seen me before." Hong Tailong revealed a normal expression and said, "I, Hong Tailong, am a nobody in the dragon clan. I have never made a name for myself in the divine realm. It's normal that we haven't seen each other." "You are from the dragon clan?" Grandma Yen looked at him in surprise as if she couldn't believe it. Just as she was about to ask again, she saw Hong Tailong casually walking to the front of the huge grave mound. He caressed the dark red crystals that formed the grave mound and said, "It is said that as long as the corpse of the person buried in the blood jade red crystals is intact, his cultivation and corpse can be maintained. At the same time, the blood jade red crystals can absorb the essence of the moon and condense the dead soul. When the time is right, the dead can be resurrected. This is also the reason why people in the divine realm fight to be buried in the divine tomb cemetery. I wonder if it's true?" Grandma Yen was already annoyed by his rude behavior. Yu Qianshou glanced at her and quickly pulled Hong Tailong away to stop him from carelessly touching the grave mound. Then he pulled Xin Yu along and the three of them bid farewell to Grandma Yen. Grandma Yen nodded unhappily. She didn't say any polite words and let the three of them leave. Chapter 1181. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Hong Tailong, who was on the rapidly flying shuttle, was also somewhat unhappy. He could also tell that Grandma Yen wasn't very fond of him. He coldly snorted at Yu Qianshou, "Why are you afraid of her? She's no match for me with her cultivation." "You think you're right?" Yu Qianshou rolled his eyes. "Respect the dead. If you don't put her in your eyes, she didn't offend you. Why did you have to touch her grave? No one would be happy." "Do I, a dragon, have to kneel and kowtow to her family's dead?" Hong Tailong waved his hand disdainfully and continued to steer his flying shuttle. Suddenly he turned around and sneered, "I understand. You're afraid that you'll be implicated by your master's troubles. You're afraid that she'll be unhappy and expose your identity, right? Don't talk about useless things. Yu Qianqiu snorted. He crossed his arms and rubbed his chin, thinking about something. The expression on his face was somewhat strange. Suddenly he looked at Hong Tailong with a strange gaze and said, "Let me ask you, you said that as long as the corpses of the dead are intact, they can maintain their cultivation. Is that true?" "I don't know if it's true, but that's what I've heard in the divine realm. However, I've never heard of anyone being resurrected, so I'm not sure. Why are you interested in this? Do you also want to be buried in?" Hong Tailong's voice paused and his body suddenly trembled. He turned around and exclaimed in shock, "Could it be that you want to use the Shenming soul refining technique too?" He glanced at Xinyu and swallowed his words. He still didn't know how close this Xinyu fellow was to Yu Qianqiu, and there were some things that he couldn't let him know. However, Yu Qianqiu nodded thoughtfully and said, "If his cultivation really hasn't dissipated, I wonder if it's been too long since he died. Is there any use in using the Shenming soul refining technique?" Hong Tailong's eyes flickered as he swept his gaze across his surroundings. He was a little excited as he chuckled. "Do you want to give it a try?" He seemed to be searching for a target. Xinyu looked at the two of them in confusion. He didn't know what they were talking about, but his instincts told him that they were up to no good. At that moment, the flying shuttle arrived above the tomb that Old Man Meng had been guarding. The ground was full of potholes as if an interstellar war had taken place. However, the dark red crystal tomb was still there. Hong Tailong winked at Yu Qianqiu and gestured at the grave below. Yu Qianqiu immediately had a look of disdain on his face. Looking at this old fellow's character, he must have done a lot of good things with Yi Tiankong back then. "I'm not in the mood for this right now. Let's go to the edge of the all-celestial boundary and see how my master is doing," said Yu Qianqiu as he pointed forward. "All right. We'll talk about it when we get back." Hong Tailong chuckled as if he was very interested in being a thief. He forgot about the dignity of the dragon race and flew away on the flying shuttle. The flying shuttle soon arrived at the edge of the all-celestial boundary. Who knew that just as it approached, someone would shout, "Who is it?" Suddenly, 3 people descended from the sky, forming a triangle around the flying shuttle. Hong Tailong's gaze swept over the 3 people, and his pupils shrank slightly. He discovered that he could not see through the cultivation of these 3 people. They were clearly higher than him. Yu Qianqiu knew that they had encountered an expert when he saw Hong Tailong's expression. He quickly cupped his fists at the 3 and said with a smile, "We heard that someone is doing evil here, so we came here to see which madman has the guts to do so." The 3 of them turned a deaf ear to his words. Their gazes were fixed on Hong Tailong as they looked at each other in disbelief. After a long while, one of them asked in bewilderment, "You're from the dragon race?" The 3 of them had a higher cultivation than Hong Tailong, so they could see through Hong Tailong's true form. "Can't I?" Hong Tailong shouted with an imposing manner. "I heard that someone is doing evil here. I came here to investigate. Could it be that you are trying to stop me?" "So it's the dragon race's emissary." The 3 of them mistook Hong Tailong as an emissary sent by the dragon race. They bowed and greeted him. The person who answered earlier even explained to Hong Tailong respectfully, "There is indeed a madman doing evil here. He is inside the all-celestial boundary ahead. Emissary, please report back to Great Coiling Dragon God as soon as possible and eliminate this person." "Let me there." Hong Tailong pointed at Hong Tailong and put on airs. The 3 of them immediately led the way. Yu Qianqiu looked at Hong Tailong with a disgusted expression. He was even more certain that this old fellow must have done many bad things in the past. After arriving at their destination, the group stood at the edge of the transverse cliff. The person who answered earlier waved his hand and pointed into the darkness ahead. "Emissary, please look. That person is right there." Yu Qianqiu and the others looked in the direction he pointed. In the void not too far away, Bai Changchun was quietly floating there in his green robe. His eyes were closed and his brows were drooping. He was motionless like a statue. Golden arcs of light constantly flickered around his body. They either flew out of his body in complicated trajectories or entered his body in an ethereal manner. The golden arcs of light were constantly moving in and out of his body. No one knew what they were doing. Hong Tailong glanced at Yu Qianqiu. From his expression, he confirmed that it was his master. He suddenly shouted, "Hey! Who is doing evil here? Quickly report your name." "It's useless." The person who guided them shook his head and explained, "The all-celestial boundary isolates everything. He can't hear our voices at all. We also don't know when he will wake up and we can't go over either. Sigh. This person is very strange. I don't know what method he used to hide in the all-celestial boundary. I'm afraid Emissary Dragon will have to report back to Great Coiling Dragon God before he can make a decision. We can't contact your master. What should we do? Hong Tailong secretly transmitted his voice. Yu Qianqiu was also helpless. He said in the dark, "Forget it. Let's focus on our own matters first." Hong Tailong then said to the other three with a stern expression, "I know what to do. I will go back and report back now." The three quickly offered to send him off, but Hong Tailong rejected them. He drove the flying shuttle again and left with Yu Qianqiu and Xin Yu. After watching them leave, one of them expressed doubt. "Why do I feel that this emissary dragon is a little strange? He actually brought two people with such shallow cultivation with him, and he even drove the flying shuttle himself. Do you think he might be an imposter?" Another person shook his head and said, "Why do you care so much? There's no doubt that he's a dragon. It's even more impossible for him to be an imposter. If he wasn't here on imperial orders, he wouldn't have been able to break through the all-celestial boundary. Besides, have you ever heard of a dragon daring to impersonate Great Coiling Dragon God's envoy?" As they were discussing, Hong Tailong, who had flown far away, suddenly turned around on the flying shuttle. He put his hands on Yu Qianqiu's shoulders and said with a trembling voice, "If the matter of me impersonating Great Coiling Dragon God's envoy gets out, you have to help me explain to Great Coiling Dragon God. I'm only impersonating him so that you can meet your master." "All right, I know." Yu Qianqiu pushed his hands away and said nonchalantly, "What's there to be afraid of? You didn't lie. You're Great Coiling Dragon God's envoy. Don't think too much. Stop there and we'll do our own things." Xin Yu had been listening to the conversation between the two in bewilderment. Why did it involve Great Coiling Dragon God again? He felt that things were getting out of hand. He didn't know if following these two fellows was a blessing or a curse. Hong Tailong sighed and turned around. He thought to himself, "I'm afraid my time as an envoy has long expired." Not long after, the three of them returned to the sky above the lonely tomb. Hong Tailong looked around and made sure that there was no one around. He quickly put away the flying shuttle and the three of them landed in front of the tombstone. There were words on the tombstone. "Honghua Star Monarch. I've heard of this person. He's a member of the Light Ancient God clan. I think he's a late-stage great god. However, he fell when the demon god wreaked havoc in the divine realm. I didn't expect him to be buried here." Hong Tailong nodded as he looked at the tombstone. "Ah, his surname is Hong just like yours." Yu Qianqiu teased. Hong Tailong was about to retort when he saw Yu Qianqiu lightly stomp his feet. The three of them immediately sank into the ground. Then the ground above them closed up again, blocking the bright moonlight. Hong Tailong couldn't help but shake his head. This guy really knew the earth elemental art. Meanwhile, Yu Qianqiu used the earth elemental art to sense the depth of the tomb. After diving down to a depth of 10 meters, he suddenly pointed with his finger. The soil in front of him parted, and a large hole appeared on the wall made of blood jade and red crystals. Immediately, a faint red light could be seen moving gently in front of him. Yu Qianqiu looked at it warily. He stepped aside to make way and said, "There's no danger in there, right?" Hong Tailong was speechless. He knew that this guy meant for him to go in and check first. He strode in and walked around. After confirming that there was nothing wrong, he shouted, "Come in. It's fine." Yu Qianqiu then swaggered in while Xin Yu followed behind him in fear. He realized that every time he followed Yu Qianqiu had to do some unimaginable and scary things. The space inside the tomb was not small, and the lighting was good. The entire tomb's walls and floor were made of blood jade red crystals. Strands of red light shone down from the blood jade red crystals on the ceiling. They formed a fan shape and focused on a corpse in the center. It was a man's corpse, and he was also lying on a long bed made of blood jade red crystals. Yu Qianqiu and Xin Yu were still looking around, but Hong Tailong was already at the side of the long bed, trying to touch the corpse on it. Xin Yu didn't dare to move. Yu Qianqiu walked over to take a look. The man's corpse had a goat-like beard and a serene expression. It was as if he was sleeping and he didn't look like a dead person at all. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but curiously poke his head over and asked, "What are you doing?" Hong Tailong pinched open the man's mouth and peeked inside. He then opened the eyelids to take a look. Then he clapped his hands and said with a curious expression, "The corpse is actually soft. There's a piercing wound in his heart, but I can see that the original wound was even bigger. It's obviously healing at an extremely slow speed. It seems that the legend about the mausoleum of the god of sin is true." There might really be a possibility of resurrection. If you don't believe me, come and touch it. He pointed at the corpse on the long bed to Yu Qianzhou. Chapter 1182. Motherf ****. I'm not as perverted as you. I've never had the hobby of touching corpses. Moreover, it's a corpse that has been dead for God knows how many years. How could you do it? Yu Qianzhou spat in disgust. He had seen enough of the corpse's disgusting actions. However, he still couldn't help but poke it a few times to see if it was real or fake. Finding that it really was soft, he couldn't help but pinch the corpse's arm. He coughed and pulled his hand back. I'm more concerned about how his cultivation base is preserved. The two stood in front of the corpse that had been dead for God knows how many years and chatted. They even touched each other. Jiuyu subconsciously looked around and felt extremely horrified. Can you not always say one thing but mean another? Hong Tailong spat back. He then went straight to the point. Without giving Jiuyu a chance to refute, he said, his cultivation seems to have been damaged. I heard that Honghua Star Lord was a late-stage great god back then. Now he's only a mid-stage great god. Try and see if you can use it. What were these two guys trying to do? Jiuyu stared at the two people who had their backs to him surrounding the corpse. Middle-stage great god. It's enough, it's enough. Yu Qianzhou glanced at the entire corpse with a beaming smile on his face. Then he patted Hong Tailong's chest with the back of his hand, hinting him to step aside. Then he circled around the long couch twice. No one knew what he was thinking, but he shook his head again and again. Suddenly, he waved his hand and a seven-colored flame enveloped the entire corpse. Then he closed his eyes and remained motionless. It was Xin Yu's first time seeing the seven-colored flame and he was shocked. The flame that covered the corpse slowly melted under his claws until it became a ball floating in the air. There was a layer of grayish-white human-shaped ashes on the long bed of blood jade and red crystals, which was obviously left behind after the corpse was cremated. Yu Qianzhou suddenly opened his eyes. There were two leaping flames in his eyes. He flipped his 5 claws that were spewing out 7-colored flames. The already shrunken fireball was held in his palm, and it kept shrinking. When all the 7-colored flames had entered his palm, a sparkling and translucent purple bead was quietly lying on his palm. There was a faint red light inside the purple bead. So, the bead for a god-level cultivation base is purple. Yu Qianzhou looked at the bead in his palm and said excitedly, "Success." Hong Tailong flashed over to take a look. Xin Yu still did not understand what they were doing. You'll know once you try. Yu Qianzhou threw the bead in his hand and a 7-colored flame sprayed out from his palm. The purple bead spun in the 7-colored flame and quickly absorbed the flame. Gradually, a 3-meter-tall 7-colored flame man appeared. It looked like it was materializing. Yu Qianzhou's eyes lit up. Yu Qianzhou retracted the flame in his palm and exclaimed as he looked into the sky, "Damn it! He absorbed almost half of the Samadhi true fire in my body. The Samadhi true fire that can cover a radius of 500 meters was condensed into this." Hong Tailong and Xin Yu stared dumbfoundedly at the 3-meter-tall mighty fire man in the air. He was wearing a 7-colored fire armor and looked extremely lifelike. His pair of fiery golden eyes stared straight ahead without any emotion. The two of them could feel the terrifying power contained in this fire overlord's body. Wow. I Hong Tailong have my eyes opened. Hong Tailong's eyes lit up as he shook his head and exclaimed, a flame man with Samadhi true fire as a body and a mid-stage god-level cultivation base. This thing is really scary. With a thought from Yu Qianzhou, the flame man teleported down and waved his palm like a knife across the long bed made of blood jade and red crystal. It was easily cut in half like a knife cutting through tofu. There wasn't even a sound. The 7-colored flame man suddenly raised his head and looked at Hong Tailong. Hong Tailong was shocked and immediately felt something was wrong. He flashed behind Yu Qianzhou and shouted angrily, "You want to use me as an experiment? I'm warning you, don't make such a joke. You'll die." Yu Qianzhou chuckled. He did have such an idea, but since he had been seen through, it would hurt his feelings to scare him again. He raised his hand and opened his claw. The 7-colored flame man immediately dispersed into Samadhi true fire and was absorbed into Yu Qianzhou's body. Finally, the purple bead was in his hand. He looked at it admiringly before putting it away. Hong Tailong walked out from behind him with lingering fear and asked, "What's this thing called?" "The fire of water, fire, metal, wood, and earth. It should be called Fire Soul Mystic Weapon." Yu Qianzhou smiled proudly. With such a treasure to protect him, he wouldn't have to fear anything in the 3 realms. Hong Tailong clicked his tongue enviously and said, That means there's still Water Soul Mystic Weapon, Gold Soul Mystic Weapon, Wood Soul Mystic Weapon, and Earth Soul Mystic Weapon? Theoretically it should be like this. Snow Emperor's one is called Ice Soul Mystic Weapon. Yu Qianqiu nodded and said with pity, if I'm able to devour the other 4 great spirits, then coupled with the myriad of tombs within this mausoleum, I'll be able to refine the 5-element dark weapons. Who in the 3 dimensions would be able to stop me then? Jiuyu, who was at the side, was shocked. He understood everything now. He had seen the Ice Soul Mystic Ice of the Great Snowy Mountain. Obviously, Yu Qianqiu had obtained the secret method to refine mystic weapons from Snow Emperor. What shocked him the most was that Yu Qianqiu had set his sights on the 10 million divine tombs in the mausoleum of the God of Sin. If he succeeded, wouldn't he have to refine 10 million divine-level dark weapons? Not to mention the 3 realms, with so many divine-grade profound weapons, even in the God realm, they would be able to sweep through a region. Hong Tailong rubbed his hands excitedly and said, didn't your master kill quite a few tomb guardians? You probably don't know that we'll find a few good tombs in other places and empty them. Back then, our coiling dragon ancestor killed the wind god of the 12 ancient gods. The body of the wind god is also buried here. That's a terrifying expert with the cultivation of a late-stage ancient god. Don't you want to refine him into a mystic weapon? That wretched smile on his face was filled with the feeling of enticing people to commit a crime. It was obvious that he was very interested in stealing. No wonder he was in cahoots with the Myriad Swords demon monarch Yi Tiankong. One of the 12 ancient gods, late-stage ancient god. Yu Qianqiu and Xinyu both cried out in surprise. The former's eyes were even brighter. He had heard of the wind god's great name before. That was one of the top 12 experts since the creation of the world. If he could refine him into a mystic weapon, he would be able to do whatever he wanted in the divine realm. Yu Qianqiu swallowed his saliva with difficulty. His expression suddenly froze and he asked suspiciously, Hong Tailong. The tomb of a figure like the wind god must be guarded by an expert. I wonder what their cultivation is like. The smile on Hong Tailong's face froze and he said awkwardly, I heard that the people guarding the tomb of the wind god are his left and right envoys. They are called Tianfeng and Difeng. Their cultivation had reached early stage ancient god a long time ago. I wonder what level their cultivation is now, hee. What are you laughing at? Yu Qianqiu snorted and asked, digging the tomb of the wind god is no problem. But who can handle the 2 ancient god experts? You or me? Damn it. Even if you want to die, this is not the way to do it. Even Jiuyu couldn't help but roll his eyes at Hong Tailong, hee. Even if we can't dig the tomb of the wind god, we can still dig the tomb of others. Hong Tailong didn't give up and said, now that you have a mid-stage great god fire soul mystic weapon, you should be able to handle ordinary mid-stage great god tomb guards. Even if you can't, you should be able to stall them. It's enough for you to dig the tomb. Think about it, for a tomb guard of a mid-stage great god expert, the tomb master's cultivation is probably almost at the ancient god level. You can get a few more ancient god level mystic weapons and use them to deal with Tianfeng and Difeng. Won't you be able to dig the tomb of the wind god in the end? As he spoke, he even made a move to take drastic measures. Towards this immoral idea, Xinyu lowered his head and looked at the ground without any expression. Yu Qianqiu, on the other hand, nodded in agreement. That makes sense. But I'm afraid it's not possible now. Hong Tailong said unwillingly, why? It's very simple. First, the tomb guards here have already been alerted by my master. I'm afraid that they have already linked up. If we're not careful, we might run into their hands. So, my master messing around is equivalent to ruining our plans. Second, although this fire soul mystic weapon is powerful, it needs enough fire to boost its power. The true Samadhi fire stored in my body can only be used to scare people. It might be fine against ordinary experts, but it definitely can't support him to fight with a real expert. Otherwise, once he is defeated, he won't be able to revive in time. At that time we'll be in trouble. Jiuyu and I saw this with our own eyes at the Great Snowy Mountain. Third, with the terrain here, if we really want to do something, only the Earth Soul mystic weapon can unleash its full power. If I can devour the Earth Spirit, it'll be much safer. Earth Spirit? Hong Tailong scratched his head and said gloomily, where are we going to find the Earth Spirit at this time? Yu Qianqiu laughed sinisterly and said, unfortunately, I've heard Demon King 3 Knights say that he has an Earth Spirit under him. If we want to find an Earth Spirit, I'm afraid we'll have to find trouble with Demon King 3 Knights. Also, I've long wanted to make a move on Jean Tai's Gold Spirit, but I haven't had the chance. Now is the time to do it together. Good. Hong Tai Long clapped his hands and praised, I'm also going to find Jin Tai to settle the score. Let's go and find him now. Yu Qianqiu nodded and turned to look at Jiu Yu with a smile. Jiu Yu, this celestial barrier is very deceitful. I'm embarrassed to trouble you to come and fetch us all the time. Why don't you come with us? That way it'll be convenient for everyone. What do you think? Jiu Yu was speechless. He wanted to refuse, but was there any use in refusing? If you don't say anything, I'll take it as you agree. Yu Qianqiu directly made the decision for him. With a wave of his hand, the three of them instantly disappeared from the tomb. After the three of them returned to the underground base of the Divine Ruin Realm, Yu Qianqiu arranged for Jiu Yu to stay in a karst cave deep in the base. Wei Chuanqiu, Yun Peng and Bai Suzhen were all cultivating there. There was also underground water for Jiu Yu, the muscle spirit, to take a bath. At the same time, Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng received a hint from Yu Qianqiu that Jiu Yu was very important to him and that nothing should happen to him. In fact, he was under house arrest. Chapter 1183. Inside the underground karst cave, Xinyu, who was under house arrest, was not afraid at all. Instead, he heaved a sigh of relief. For him, being able to find a secluded place to cultivate in peace was better than anything else. He really didn't want to follow Yu Qianqiu and take risks. In his memory, as long as he followed Yu Qianqiu, there was never a time when he wasn't on tenterhooks. Everything he did was unimaginable and frightening. The underground karst cave was full of twists and turns, and the space was quite large. Yu Qianqiu had said that as long as he didn't leave this place, no one would restrict his freedom. Thus, he turned into the depths of a winding passageway and settled down. He had also thought it through. Since he had nowhere to reason with, he might as well obediently serve Yu Qianqiu. It was nothing more than going in and out of the boundary of heavens a few more times. As long as he did his part, based on his understanding of Yu Qianqiu after being in contact with him for so long, Yu Qianqiu would not do anything to him. Hong Tai Long walked around the huge underground karst cave with his hands clasped behind his back. He had no interest in Yu Qianqiu's trivial matters. Yu Qianqiu was negotiating with Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng when his gaze suddenly stopped on the stone wall of the karst cave opposite the underground river. A beautiful woman in fluttering white clothes was looking at him gently with a faint smile. Cough cough. That's it. Yu Qianqiu said and directly flashed to the opposite entrance of the cave. Bai Suzhen gently held his hand. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Then they turned around and entered the cave together. Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng looked at each other. The former blew his beard and glared at him. What a guy who only cares about the opposite sex. Inside the cave where Bai Suzhen cultivated, there was a clean long couch. Yu Qianqiu was lying comfortably on it with his head resting on the thigh of a beauty. His eyes were wide open as he looked at Bai Suzhen, who was stroking his face and smiling at him. He asked, "Why did you stop cultivating? Did we disturb you?" Bai Suzhen shook her head and said with a smile, "I couldn't hear your voices even after setting up a soundproof enchantment. I just wanted to take a walk after I finished cultivating and saw you." So that was how it was. By the way, there's something I want to tell you. Yu Qianqiu lay on her lap and told her about what had happened recently, especially about how all the cultivators in the human world had been wiped out. Then he stared at the expression on Bai Suzhen's face without blinking. Bai Suzhen frowned, then nodded slightly and said, "I understand what you mean. When you think it's appropriate, let's go back to my home and move my Snow Fox clan to a safe place." Yu Qianqiu didn't know what to say to this considerate confidant. He raised his hand and grabbed the hand that was caressing his face. A naughty smile suddenly appeared on his face as he said, "I think it's time for our relationship to take another step forward." Take another step forward? Bai Suzhen was startled. For a moment she didn't know what he meant. Yu Qianqiu's finger had already gently touched the bulge of her heart. Then he pressed his entire palm on it. Bai Suzhen immediately understood what he meant. A blush appeared on her face and a hint of shyness flashed through her eyes. Bending her soft waist, she lowered her head and took the initiative to press her lips against Yu Qianqiu's. The warmth of the other party's body and the attractive aura on their lips immediately ignited the lust in their hearts. Seeing that she agreed, Yu Qianqiu's beastly nature instantly erupted. He suddenly flipped over and placed Bai Suzhen on the bed. Bai Suzhen let out a moan. Their mouths couldn't be separated. Their tongues tangled together, and his hands were groping all over Bai Suzhen's body. Just as he pulled open Bai Suzhen's clothes, revealing her snow-white skin, his hand touched her soft and smooth skin. Before he could reach in, he suddenly heard Hong Tailong's loud voice coming from outside. Yu Qianqiu, where did you go? This voice was so loud that even the people outside the base could hear it. *CK. Yu Qianqiu suddenly raised his head and looked at the beautiful woman who was panting under him. He threw caution to the wind and said, *CK. Let's not care about him. Let's get down to business first. Just as he laid down again, Bai Suzhen suddenly couldn't help but burst out laughing. She reached out her hand to support his body and said, You go do what you need to do first. I can't relax with someone outside. Next time, come and find me. We'll find a quiet place. What she meant was that this time there was no atmosphere. The swan meat that he could finally taste after waiting for such a long time was scared away by someone. Yu Qianqiu instantly jumped up with a face full of grief and indignation. He quickly walked out and his angry roar came from outside. Hong Tailong, you uncultured thing. I was doing something very important but I was interrupted by a beast like you. Bai Suzhen sat up on the bed and tidied up her messy clothes. When she heard Yu Qianqiu yelling at someone outside, she couldn't help but giggle. She tidied up her hair and walked out. Hong Tailong, who had been scolded to the point that his head was spinning, finally waited for Yu Qianqiu to take a breather. He said with a stunned expression, What did I interrupt you for? Just as he finished speaking, his gaze paused on the hole in the stone wall in front of him. He saw a beautiful woman in white standing there and nodding at him as a greeting. That was the place where Yu Qianqiu came out from. Wei Chuanqiu, Yun Peng, and Xin Yu stuck their heads out from 3 different directions and looked in their direction. Hong Tailong instantly realized that he had ruined their plan. He slapped his forehead and said, So you're just sharpening your axe to cut firewood? I was wrong. I was wrong. You continue with your important business. I'll leave. I promise I won't disturb you anymore. He waved his hand repeatedly to signal Yu Qianqiu to go back, then turned around and left. *CKU. Yu Qianqiu cursed loudly. He wanted nothing more than to go over and give him 2 kicks. The atmosphere was already ruined. What was the use of you leaving? Hong Tailong pretended not to hear anything. He buried his head in a hole and crawled into it. He faced the wall and drew circles with his index finger. He kept mumbling, I was wrong. Right at this moment, Zhang Peng quickly dashed into the karst cave from the outside. He also heard Hong Tailong's shout and knew that his master had returned. It just so happened that he had something to talk to him about. Who knew that he would see his master so angry the moment he arrived? He stood at the entrance of the cave, not knowing what to do or what was going on. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Zhang Peng. He knew that he wouldn't come here for no reason. Therefore he suppressed his anger and temporarily put Hong Tailong's matter aside. He walked over and asked, What's the matter? Zhang Peng was stunned. He immediately remembered why he was looking for his master. He quickly replied, When Rui wanted to look for you a few times but unfortunately he never met you. When Rui? Yu Qianqiu paused and frowned. When Rui from the Wanlanfeng clan? Yes. Zhang Peng nodded. Yu Qianqiu asked curiously, Why is he looking for me? Let's go. Let's go take a look. The master and disciple flew out together. In the base's conference room, Yu Qianqiu didn't have to wait long before Zhang Peng brought Wenrui over. When Wenrui saw Yu Qianqiu, he quickly bowed and said, Greetings, torture envoy. Ah, we're all acquaintances. Take a seat. Yu Qianqiu sat on the seat of honor. He asked curiously, I heard that you've been looking for me a few times. What's the matter? Wenrui didn't sit. He walked up to him and cupped his hands. I've been trying to find out something but unfortunately, I haven't been able to find out anything. Therefore, I'd like to ask the torture envoy. Yu Qianqiu's eyes flickered. He could roughly guess what Wenrui wanted to ask, but he still wore a faint smile on his face. Ask away. There's no need to be so reserved. Then I'll be presumptuous. Wenrui cupped his hands again and said, Here's the thing. There are hundreds of cultivators from the Wen clan. Everyone knows that ancestor Wanlanfeng has left with you, torture envoy. But this time we didn't even get to see him. Everyone really misses him, so they asked me to ask the torture envoy where our ancestor has gone. Or has something happened to him? Yu Qianqiu sat up straight and tapped his fingers on the table. To be honest, I don't know where your ancestor has gone. When I was still in the mystic immortal city, your ancestor found me. He said that he wanted to regain his dignity in front of Lu Yanqing. You should know that your ancestor has deep feelings for Valley Master Lu, so he left to cultivate alone. I've been looking for him often but unfortunately, I haven't heard from him yet. So, I'm also worried that something might have happened to him. So that's how it is. When Rui bowed, a thoughtful expression on his face. After a while, he looked like he wanted to say something but hesitated. Speak your mind. I'll definitely help you if I can solve any problems. Yu Qianshou didn't finish his sentence. He wondered if the One clan didn't have the upper hand in the military competition system, so they wanted to find Wen Lanfeng to support them. If that was the case, he would have to reason with him. Unexpectedly, Wen Rui hesitated for a while and cupped his hands. I have a presumptuous request. I hope the torture envoy can agree to it. Tell me what it is first. Yu Qianshou smiled gently. Well, Wen Rui was a little embarrassed. To tell you the truth, the ancestor is the backbone of the Wen clan. Hundreds of clansmen want to find the ancestor and have been urging me to do so. I'm wondering, can the torture envoy allow me to go to the immortal realm to inquire about the ancestor? You want to leave this place alone? Yu Qianshou's smile froze, then he smiled faintly again. It's not that I don't want to promise you, but the immortal realm is currently in a time where the demonic Tao is running rampant. It's too dangerous for you to go out alone. I'm afraid that once you leave this place you'll most likely die. Wen Lanfeng is no longer here, so I have to be responsible for your safety. Wen Rui thought that this would be enough to make the other party retreat, but unexpectedly, Wen Rui plopped down on his knees and kowtowed, sobbing. Wen Rui has been entrusted by hundreds of clansmen to find the ancestor. Whether the ancestor is dead or alive, as long as there's news of the ancestor, we'll be at ease. As long as I can inquire about the ancestor's whereabouts, Wen Rui's insignificant life is nothing. Even if I die, it won't be regretted. Yu Qianshou was taken aback. Just a moment ago he had hardened his heart and had some killing intent. However, when a man like him knelt down and cried on the spot, he immediately felt apologetic. Thus, he felt pity for him and quickly got up to help him up. Get up. I understand your difficulties and your feelings. Such loyalty is commendable, how can I refuse you? How about this? Go back and make some preparations. When I leave I'll take you with me. How about that? Chapter 1184. After Wen Rui left, Zhang Peng looked at his master in confusion. He felt that this was not his master's character. He didn't know if his master had other plans, so he approached and asked, Master, are you really going to let him leave here alone? What he meant was the old rule. If it was inconvenient for him to be the bad guy, then he would be the scapegoat. He was used to being the scapegoat anyway, so he didn't mind taking one more. For example, Nongzhu almost fell out with him last time because of the Jasper Flower Fairy. However, Zhang Peng was now in power and decisive. His millions of troops only needed an order to attack immediately. Zhang Peng's face darkened, and Nongzhu couldn't do anything to him. After all, he wasn't Yu Qianshou and he wasn't familiar with him. He wouldn't give him a chance to scold and order him around. Zhang Peng was ready to get rid of Wen Rui as long as Yu Qianshou didn't say anything. Unexpectedly, Yu Qianshou, who was standing with his hands behind his back, thought of the Snow Empress and her husband in the Great Snow Mountain. He shook his head slightly and sighed, let him go. After all, they are all acquaintances in the human world. I don't want to lose the last bit of old affection. He really didn't want to gain more and lose more. He sighed with emotion and a rare compassion. Zhang Peng had grown up on the battlefield and was used to living on the edge of a knife. His understanding of soft-heartedness was even more thorough than his master's. Once he discovered someone who was dangerous to the overall situation, he wouldn't even blink when he saw blood splattering everywhere. He frowned and said, what if he leaks the location of our base after leaving? So what? Yu Qianshou, who was facing the wall in deep thought, turned around and said confidently, the base is in the ruins of God. Even if Sanyi knows we are inside, what can he do to us? The ruins of God is still too early to open. I don't think they can do anything to us. Besides, if Wen Rui is really a disloyal person, keeping him around is more dangerous than letting him go. Yes, this disciple understands. If there is nothing else, this disciple will take his leave. Zhang Peng respectfully retreated. Although he appeared to be obeying, he still felt that something was wrong. For him, as the commander of an army, if he did not plan for the overall situation, he would not be able to plan for a region, and if he did not plan for 10,000 generations, he would not be able to plan for a moment. This was also what his master had told him, and he had always believed it. Therefore, he had to be ready to deal with unexpected events at any time. Moreover, the world of cultivation was different from the mortal world. There were countless strange things happening and nothing was absolute. If there was an emergency and he didn't handle it well, then he would be derelict in his duty. However, he still obeyed his master's decision unconditionally. However, he was prepared to make the best preparations within the scope of his authority. He decided to adjust the defense of the army so that he would not be caught off guard if an accident happened. Not long after Zhang Ping left, Nongzhu burst in again. As soon as she saw Yu Qianqiu, she pounded the table and yelled, "Yu Qianqiu! What do you mean? What's wrong? Why are you throwing such a tantrum? Who provoked you?" Yu Qianqiu pretended not to know the answer. "Cut it out. Don't tell me you don't know about Qianghua." Nongzhu told him what had happened. It turned out that after Qianghua Ferry was taken away by Zhang Peng, Qianghua Ferry told Ziyi that they were mother and daughter when he was in a coma. Now Ziyi looked sad when she saw him and ignored him. How could such a thing happen? Yu Qianqiu was surprised. He spread out his hands and said, "I really don't know. I'm sure it has nothing to do with me." Bullshit. Nongzhu kicked over the chair and pointed at Yu Qianqiu's nose. She scolded, "No one else knows about the thing between me and Qianghua except you. It's no wonder that you didn't instruct her. Now Ziyi doesn't care about me anymore. If you don't solve this problem, I won't let you go." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand with a solemn expression, indicating that he really wasn't the one who ordered this. Suddenly he frowned and said, "I understand. I told Zhang Peng about your relationship with Fairy Jade Flower and asked him to take care of Fairy Jade Flower. Actually, I had good intentions. Later you were injured, so I asked Zhang Peng to arrange a careful woman to take care of you. Did that bastard take Qianghua Ferry to you?" "You." Nongzhu pointed at him and didn't know what to say. She also didn't know whether this guy was telling the truth or not. Although she felt that it was reasonable and could be true, she knew Yu Qianqiu too well. She always believed only 30% of the words that came out of his mouth. "Don't be angry. It really has nothing to do with me. Of course, I won't shirk my responsibility. I'll give you a satisfactory explanation." Yu Qianqiu walked over with a gloomy face and a faint murderous intent. He said in a low voice, "That Qianghua Fairy is so hateful. We can't vent our hatred if we don't teach her a lesson. How about this? I'll personally talk to Ziyi and tell her that Jasper Flower Fairy is a person with ulterior motives. I'll let Zhang Ping deal with the trouble he caused. I'll let Zhang Ping use military law to pry open her mouth and make her beg for death. I guarantee that she'll personally tell Ziyi that she lied to her before. What do you think?" Nongzhu was speechless. He sensed Yu Qianqiu's killing intent and did not doubt that this cruel and merciless guy would kill Qianghua Fairy. But to be honest, after all, they had been husband and wife for one night. Nongzhu did not want to torture Qianghua Fairy to the point where she begged for death. But he still said stubbornly, "Keep pretending." Then he swung his sleeves and left. "Alas, don't go." Yu Qianqiu chased after him and shouted, "I'm telling the truth. If you don't believe me, I'll tell Zhang Ping first. If you want, you can ask Zhang Ping to deal with it. Get out of here." Nongzhu turned around and spat on his face, then left. Yu Qianqiu wiped the spittle off his face and hummed a Beijing opera song. "I was watching the mountain scenery from the tower when I heard the chaos outside the city. Flags fluttered in the air, but it turned out to be the soldiers sent by General Sima." With his hands behind his back, he walked back proudly. In the main bedroom of the backyard of the passionless palace in the mystic immortal city, a woman's blood-boiling moan kept ringing. Sometimes it was low, sometimes it was loud and clear. After the violent crash, the muscular, naked Demon King 3 Knights lay down on the bed in a relaxed manner. The Demon King's charming eyes were like silk as she stretched out her curvaceous and proud white body. After cleaning the Demon King 3 Knights, she laid down on his chest and asked softly, "Demon King, you're a good girl. I heard news from the underworld that Bai Qi has gone missing. What's going on?" "He's looking for trouble. When the time comes, don't blame me for breaking my promise." The Demon King of 3 Knights' eyes flickered. He raised his hand and lifted the goose egg-like white chin on his chest. He smiled faintly and said, "Could it be that you're sleeping next to me but you're thinking of Bai Qi? The two of you seem to have loved each other to death. Could it be that you still have feelings for him?" The Demon King of Azure Sky pushed his hand away and lay back on the bed. She snorted coldly and said, "I've already cut off all ties with him. If it wasn't for the Demon King's promise, just because he sealed me in the demon realm for so many years, I would have torn him to pieces." It was only when they were on the bed that she dared to make a move on the Demon King of 3 Knights. The Demon King of 3 Knights gave a non-committal, "Oh." Suddenly Eunuch Li knocked on the door and shouted, "Demon King." The Demon King of 3 Knights pushed the Demon King of Azure Sky away and got off the bed. The demon king of Azure Sky hurriedly got up and helped him put on his armor and cloak. He watched as the demon king of 3 nights strode out. Then he slowly took a few steps back and sat on the bed with his butt bare. He seemed to have lost something. Suddenly he heard the conversation outside mention Yan Juexing. He immediately came to his senses and quickly put on his clothes. In the courtyard outside, the demon king of 3 nights suddenly turned around and asked. He said he came from the human realm and just escaped from the hands of the ruins of God realm Yu Qianqiu. He's Vice Palace Lord Yan's servant? Eunuch Li bowed slightly and said, yes. I've checked. He was indeed affected by the demon eye ecstasy. It shouldn't be fake. All the passages leading to the human realm have been cut off. I thought that Yu Qianqiu wanted to stay in the human realm and not interfere with the matters of our demonic path army. I didn't think that he would actually hide in the ruins of God realm. The demon king of 3 nights sneered and said, bring that person to see me. Also, bring Vice Palace Lord Yan over to confront him. Eunuch Li quickly left and brought Yan Juexing and Wen Rui over not long after. Yan Juexing had already recovered to his original state. He had suffered a great loss in the demon realm and had his physical body destroyed. If not for the miraculous demonic arts and the 3 nights and the others helping him find a suitable body to take over, he probably wouldn't have recovered so quickly. As for Wen Rui, because he had long been controlled by Yan Juexing's demon eye, after thinking of ways to get Yu Qianqiu to be sent out of the ruins of God realm, he immediately found the people of the demon realm and declared that he was Yan Juexing's subordinate. When the people of the demon realm heard that he was Vice Palace Lord Yan's subordinate, they didn't dare to delay and immediately arranged for him to be sent over to verify. When the master and servant met, Yan Juexing had already asked about Wen Rui's situation on the way here, so he already had an understanding of the situation. After arriving at the backyard, the two of them bowed to the demon king of 3 nights. Wen Rui then gave a detailed answer to the demon king of 3 nights' questions about the situation in the ruins of God realm. Just what kind of mystical treasure is it, to actually be able to travel back and forth between the 3 realms at will? The demon king of 3 nights' eyes flickered and said, no wonder the passage to the human realm was sealed, and Yu Qianqiu was still able to run to the already sealed ruins of God realm. The Azure Sky Great Demon King had already tidied himself up and stood quietly behind him. For a woman to be able to come out of the demon king of 3 nights' bedroom, it was obvious what she had done before. Yan Juexing couldn't help but take a few more glances, but what he was most worried about was that the human realm was sealed. There were still people he cared about there. However, there were some secrets that he didn't want to completely confess, so he impatiently cupped his hands and said, Demon King, my mother and sister are still in the hands of Yu Qianqiu, please think of a way to save them, Demon King. Of course. The demon king of 3 nights nodded, then tilted his head slightly and said, that sealed ruins of God realm, Jin Tai should know better than us. Eunuch Li understood what he meant. He wanted to find Jin Tai, so he bowed slightly and left. Chapter 1185. Jin Tai, who had been summoned, felt apprehensive. He did not know why the demon lord had summoned him, but he did not dare delay and rushed over as fast as he could. Demon Lord 3 nights stared at Jin Tai and said indifferently, back when my devil path dominated the 3 realms, I had never heard of the Divine Ruin Realm. Tell me in detail what this Divine Ruin Realm is. Yes. Jin Tai bowed and glanced at the people present. He was a little curious in his heart, but he still answered honestly, although the Divine Ruin Realm and the Netherworld Divine Palace are located in the Immortal Realm and the Netherworld respectively, they are actually similar. It's just that the Netherworld Divine Palace was created by the Coiling Dragon God, while the Divine Ruin Realm was created by the Phoenix God. There are all kinds of fierce beasts in the Divine Ruins Realm, and their cultivations are all different. The one with the highest cultivation is a rainbow-feathered lion king with a cultivation similar to mine, and he is the current lord of the Divine Ruins Realm. When I fought with him back then, he was slightly weaker than me, but I was also unable to kill him. Created by the Phoenix God. Demon Lord 3 nights pondered for a moment, then asked, do you have any way to enter the Divine Ruin Realm? Jin Tai answered truthfully, the passage to the Divine Ruin Realm is a bit strange. It only opens once every 100 years, and there is still some time before it opens again. If you want to enter, you will have to wait until it opens again. This subordinate has no other way to enter. I didn't call you here to listen to your refusal, I wanted you to think of a way. Demon Lord 3 nights' eyes flashed with red light. I let you rule the immortal world for so many years, yet you can't even do such a small thing. What's the difference between you and trash? What's the use of keeping you? Jin Tai trembled in fear. Just as he was about to beg, his eyes suddenly moved and he revealed a look of joy, reporting to the demon lord, although I have no way to enter, there is someone who might have a way. However, I cannot invite that person. I'm afraid the demon lord will have to find him personally. Yan Juexing's eyes also lit up as he looked at three knights with some hope. Who is so arrogant that I have to personally invite him? Demon Lord Three Knights said, don't beat around the bush, just say who it is. Old Man Mu of the ancient forest. Jin Tai observed his expression and said, back then the reason why I was able to deal with that myriad swords demon monarch was because he gave me pointers in the divine ruin realm, allowing me to find the phoenix plume and refine the soul transformation smoke. In this subordinate's opinion, he should be very familiar with the divine ruin realm. Mu Yuanzi. Demon monarch Three Knights muttered to himself. After seeing Yan Juexing's hopeful gaze, he closed his eyes and said, all right. It's settled then, Kinta. Come with me to the ancient forest. Kintai's expression stiffened and he immediately panicked. He didn't expect that Sanyu would ask him to go with him. He immediately cursed Bai Qi in his heart. Why did he drag Old Man Mu into this? If they confronted each other later, wouldn't he die a horrible death? He had thought that as long as he didn't face Old Man Mu, he would have a million reasons to convince the demon lord of Three Knights that Old Man Mu was lying if he asked about it later. Given his temper, if he couldn't deal with Old Man Mu, he wouldn't have gone to look for Old Man Mu again and again. However, there was no other way. Demon Monarch Three Knights did as he said. After instructing Eunuch Li to guard the house well, he flung his scarlet cloak and flew away. Kintai didn't dare to hesitate and could only bite the bullet and chase after him. However, he already had an idea in his mind. He had the thought that it was better for him to die than for himself. Anyway, he wasn't the one who said it. He was prepared to push all the blame onto Bai Qi and think of a way to protect himself first. After the people in the courtyard dispersed, Yan Juexing led Wen Rui back to his heavily guarded mountain. He had just instructed Wen Rui to settle down and was about to return to his room to wait for news from Demon Monarch Three Knights when a guard ran in and reported, Demon Monarch Qing Tian requests to see you. Quickly invite him in. Yan Juexing ordered. He waited for a while before slowly walking out to welcome him. Although Demon Monarch Qing Tian was an old minister of the devil world and had a higher cultivation than him, he didn't want others to see that he was eager to curry favor with him. Before he walked out of the inner courtyard, Demon Monarch Qing Tian walked over with a smile. He bowed and said, Greetings, Vice Palace Lord. Yan Juexing cupped his hands politely and said, May I know what advice Lord Qing Tian has for me? How would this subordinate dare to give advice to Vice Palace Lord Yan? The Demon King of Qing Tian stroked his hair and said with a concerned expression, I heard that the Vice Palace Master was frightened previously. I don't know if this physical body is suitable for you to possess. I'm proficient in a set of techniques, and I'm willing to help the Vice Palace Master loosen up your bones. After saying that, he looked around. Seeing that there was no one else around, he directly walked past Yan Juexing and entered his room. He waved his hand and said, Vice Palace Lord, quickly come and lie down on the bed. Yan Juexing was momentarily confused by her. He thought that she had something secretive to report. Who knew that just as he entered the room with a heavy heart, Demon Monarch Qing Tian closed the door and pulled Yan Juexing to press him down on the bed, really letting him massage him. What are you doing? Yan Juexing was shocked. Who knew that there was still more to come? Just as he was about to get up, Demon Monarch Qing Tian had already taken off her clothes and was on top of him. Yan Juexing flipped over and pushed her away. He flashed to the door and opened it. Standing at the door to prove that he was open and above board, he said, Lord Qing Tian, please leave quickly. I can pretend that I don't know anything. Demon Monarch Qing Tian laid on the bed and giggled seductively. Vice Palace Lord, what are you afraid of? I have been serving Lord Devil God all the way until Devil King Three Knights. My responsibility is to serve every generation's Devil King well. Vice Palace Lord will ascend to the Devil King's throne sooner or later, so there's no need to hold back. Even if Devil King knows, he won't say anything. Otherwise, Qing Tian wouldn't dare to disturb you. Yan Juexing had long heard of Demon Monarch Qing Tian's beauty. Although he knew that she had countless men in her bedchamber, and although his heart was moved by this woman, he wouldn't touch Devil King Three Knights woman before he ascended to the Devil King's throne. Who knew if she was sent to test him? He cupped his hands and said, I still have some things to do. Lord Qing Tian, please do as you wish. After saying that, he quickly left. After Yu Qianqiu brought Wenrui to the celestial realm, they separated. He didn't know that Wenrui had already betrayed him. In order to not alert the enemy in the celestial realm and to avoid directly going against Devil King 3 Knights, Yu Qianqiu and Hong Tailong secretly captured a few people from the Devil Dao to interrogate them. They didn't manage to get any information about the Earth Spirit. It seemed like they didn't know who the Earth Spirit was. However, they did get information that Jin Tai was in the illusory immortal city. In the underground space created by the Earth Art, Hong Tailong directly killed a captive that didn't get any information. He turned around and asked, "What do we do? It seems like we still have to find high-level people from the Devil Dao to ask about the Earth Spirit's whereabouts. However, if we make a move, we will definitely alert others. We can't capture these small shrimps silently. We might be surrounded and attacked by other experts, or we might have to face Devil King 3 Knights directly. Should we run further away and capture a Devil Dao expert in the Netherworld to ask? F***CK. Since we know where Jin Tai is, let's go to the illusory immortal city to investigate. If we can capture Jin Tai, we should be able to ask him who the Earth Spirit is." Yu Qianqiu stared at him and asked, "Do you dare to come with me? What am I afraid of?" Hong Tailong patted his chest heroically. However, his aura instantly weakened as he reminded, "If you can't win, you must remember to bring me along when you run. You worry too much. If something happens and I really can't save you in time, you can just bring Yi Tiankong out to protect yourself." Yu Qianqiu snickered. "You really plan on leaving me behind if something happens?" Hong Tailong was a little anxious. "How could I? I promise I won't abandon you. I, Yu Qianqiu, have always been a man of my word. Once I say it, it's a done deal." Yu Qianqiu guaranteed with his character. "Oh my god. Don't scare me. I'm really not a match for Devil King 3 Knights. If you didn't say that, I would still be confident. But the moment you say it, I'm trembling in fear. This old dragon has personally seen you pull out the nail." Hong Tailong pulled him back and said anxiously, "Explain it clearly first. If you don't explain it clearly, I won't take that risk." "Cut the crap. With a mid-stage Great God Fire Soul Mystic weapon, are you still afraid that we won't have enough time to escape?" Yu Qianqiu waved his hand, and the two disappeared into the ground at the same time. In the center of the ancient forest, on top of the scarlet-red cliffs, a winding river quietly flowed above the exposed red rocks. The ancient language tree was covered with golden leaves like a golden umbrella. The nervous Jin Tai had been hoping that Devil King 3 Knights wouldn't be able to find Mu Yuanzi. However, when he saw Devil King 3 Knights flying in a certain direction, he immediately guessed that the other party probably had a way to find Mu Yuanzi. As expected, when he reached the ancient language tree, he saw Devil King 3 Knights standing there, slapping the ancient language tree repeatedly. The entire ancient language tree shook violently. Jin Tai didn't know why he was doing this, so he waited silently to the side. After a while, Devil King 3 Knights stopped slapping the tree and slowly turned around to look behind him. Jin Tai suddenly turned around and saw Mu Yuanzi walking out of a wall of light with a large wooden staff. Mu Yuanzi stared at Jin Tai and shouted, "Jin Tai! How dare you ignore my words and come to my ancient forest? Do you really think I don't dare to kill you?" Jin Tai hurriedly flashed behind Devil King 3 Knights and stood with his hands behind his back. Devil King 3 Knights had brought him here to verify spiritual master Mu Yuanzi so that he wouldn't find the wrong person. Seeing this, Jin Tai didn't need to ask any questions to know that this person was definitely the person he was looking for. He smiled faintly and said, "When my Devil Dao roamed the 3 realms, we always abided by our ancestors' teachings and didn't easily disturb the ancient forest. That's why Third Knight never had the chance to pay a visit to Senior Mu. I have no choice but to make a sudden visit this time. Please forgive me, Senior Mu." With this, Mu Yuanzi no longer paid attention to Jin Tai. Instead, he stared at Third Knight and said in a low voice, "You're the third Devil King of the Devil World, Devil King 3 Knights?" His tone was somewhat shocked. Glancing at Jin Tai, he faintly guessed that this guy had probably reopened the Devil World. "That's right." Devil King 3 Knights cupped his hands slightly as a sign of respect. Chapter 1186. Mu Yuanzi stood there indifferently with his cane. Even the demon god of the past had to give him some face. He felt that 3 Knights' respect was only natural. He stood there and asked indifferently, "What business does the demon lord have in my ancient forest?" After so many years, 3 Knights had forgotten that there was someone who dared to put on airs in front of him. A faint red light appeared in his eyes, and he lost interest in pleasantries. However, he still had a faint smile on his face. I want to ask Senior Mu about something. 3 Nights has something to do in the Divine Ruin Realm, but it's not time to open yet, so I want to ask Senior to show me a way in. Mu Yuanzi's cold gaze swept over Jin Tai, and then he snorted, with the Demon Lord's strength, unifying the 3 realms is not a problem. Do you want to even go to the Divine Ruin Realm? Listen to my advice, greed will not end well. This was a warning. The smile on Demon Lord 3 Nights' face disappeared, and the scarlet cape fluttering in the wind instantly stopped. He said indifferently, I won't hide it from Senior, a pair of people use some unknown method to escape into the Divine Ruin Realm. I must kill them, so I ask Senior to show me the way. Mu Yuanzi's expression changed slightly and he said with a frown, Is there someone in the 3 realms who knows how to open the Divine Ruin Realm? Oh. Yu Qianshou. Demon Lord 3 Nights didn't hide anything. Yu Qianshou? Mu Yuanzi froze and then said in shock, How can he open the passage to the Divine Ruin Realm? I don't know about this, but it seems that Senior Mu also knows Yu Qianshou. Demon Lord 3 Nights' tone changed and he said word by word, From Senior's words, you definitely know how to open the Divine Ruin Realm. Please teach me. I don't know how to open the Divine Ruin Realm, so don't disturb me in the future. Mu Yuanzi said stiffly, and then turned to open the profound wave light wall to return to his Mu Killer Sea. Mu Yuanzi. Don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Demon Lord 3 Nights' cold and threatening voice sounded behind him. Mu Yuanzi abruptly turned around and slammed the wooden staff in his hand into the ground. His eyes shone brightly as he shouted, Even demonic god Yi doesn't dare to be so rude to me. Since when did it become your turn to be so impudent? Under the golden leaves of the ancient language tree, the scarlet cape suddenly fluttered in the wind. Demon Monarch 3 Nights snorted coldly and said, Mu Yuanzi, I won't beat around the bush with you. The ancestor, Lord Devil God, had crossed the mortal realm and God realm and accepted a disciple in the lower realm. Previously, Lord Devil God had directly torn open the void and saved the disciple's life from the divine realm. Now that the disciple's parents had fallen into the hands of Yu Qianshou, San Yi, as a descendant of Devil God, naturally had to share Devil God's burden. He couldn't let Lord Devil God personally take care of everything. This concerns Lord Devil God's face, so I, San Yi, have no choice but to help. What? Mu Yuanzi exclaimed when he heard this. He did not think that the demonic god would actually accept a disciple from the lower realm, and he did not think that the demonic god would directly come from the immortal world to help this disciple. Not to mention that this cultivation was too shocking, the demonic god's actions were even more shocking. Demon Monarch 3 Nights snorted and continued, If you are willing to help me, I, San Yi, will follow the old rules of the Night Clan and restrict the heroes of the Devil Dao from invading your ancient forest. But if you don't give me this face, then don't blame me for not caring about the feelings of the older generation. For Lord Devil God, I, San Yi, can do anything and I will do it at any cost. Although your cultivation is higher than mine, you should know the power of my Devil God arts. If we fight, it's not certain who will win. If I want to destroy your ancient forest, it will only take an instant. You won't be able to do anything to me. I hope that Senior will reconsider and not force San Yi to do something he doesn't want to do. This was a completely naked threat and also a final ultimatum. It was clearly telling Mu Yuanzi that he had to agree whether he wanted to or not. Hiding to the side, Jin Tai was secretly envious of Demon Monarch 3 Nights' strength. He didn't know when he would have such an awe-inspiring moment. Mu Yuanzi's gaze was fixed on the unmoving Demon Monarch 3 Nights. His expression was dark and gloomy. No one had ever threatened him like this in many years, but he knew that Demon Monarch 3 Nights was speaking the truth. He had interacted with the Devil God before, so he naturally knew how terrifying the Devil God arts were. Although San Yi's cultivation was slightly lower than his, it was almost impossible for him to defeat San Yi. Moreover, he knew that there was an even more terrifying person behind San Yi. That person wore white robes and a white hat, and had been following Devil God Knight for a long time. His strength was extremely terrifying, but he was unusually low-key and loyal to the Night Clan. After some thought, Mu Yuanzi gave in. There was another important reason why he gave in. That was because he didn't have a good impression of Yu Qianshou to begin with. Yu Qianshou's wood elemental magic arts inexplicably made him feel a little apprehensive. Logically speaking, with Yu Qianshou's cultivation he shouldn't have felt this way, but every time he saw Yu Qianshou, he would feel a little uneasy. Mu Yuanzi took out a jade archive, quickly injected something into it, and threw it to Demon Monarch 3 Nights. He warned sternly, I hope you keep your promise. Otherwise this old man will make you regret it. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his staff and summoned a wall of light. His figure flashed into it, and the wall of light that rippled like water also disappeared. Demon Monarch 3 Knights looked at the Jade Archive for a while, then slowly nodded. So that's how it is. Come, let's go back. He transformed into a streak of light and quickly flew away. Jean Tai, on the other hand, was stunned. He didn't think that the two of them wouldn't talk about what he was worried about because they didn't get along. He happily chased after him. Under the night sky, in Illusory Immortal City, Yu Qianqiu and Hong Tailong, who had killed 2 devil soldiers, changed into their clothes. They had more or less figured out the situation in Illusory Immortal City. The defenses here weren't as tight as they thought, because the demonic cultivators didn't believe that anyone from the netherworld or immortal realm would have the guts to come here and throw their lives away. Although they didn't manage to find out who the Earth Spirit was, they managed to find out the mountain where Jin Tai and Yan Juexing lived. The two of them hid underground. Yu Qianqiu gritted his teeth and said, "That bastard Yan Juexing really isn't dead yet. He'll definitely be a disaster if we let him live." "Then which one are you planning to make a move on?" Hong Tailong unnaturally tugged at his clothes that were a little too small. He frowned and said, "Don't blame me for not reminding you. Although the defenses here aren't tight, there are many experts here. If we make a move on one of them, we'll definitely alert the others. We won't have a chance to target the other one. Have you thought clearly about who to make a move on?" After some hesitation, Yu Qianqiu shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "Let's put aside the grudge between me and that bastard for now. Emotion's 2 attacks have already made me lose the confidence to kill him. Now that Jin Tai has been defeated by Demon Monarch 3 Knights, the mountain he lives in doesn't even have any subordinates or guards. It's a good opportunity for us to make a move. Let's go, we'll deal with Jin Tai first." "Alright. I think so too." Hong Tailong rubbed his palms together and said. The two of them emerged from the ground. In order to not arouse suspicion, they swaggered through the mountain range. When they found the mountain Jin Tai lived in, they discovered that there really weren't any guards inside or outside the manor. The two of them directly flew in. The moment they landed, Hong Tailong rolled his eyes and shouted with his throat pinched, "Jin Tai! Demon Monarch is looking for you." "Jin Tai! Demon Monarch is looking for you?" However, even after searching the entire manor twice, they couldn't find a single person. Hong Tailong pretended to be mysterious and shouted for a long time, but no one answered. Finally, they confirmed that Jin Tai wasn't here, or that he had left due to some matters. In the end, the two of them decided that if they couldn't find Jin Tai, they would take the opportunity to kill Yan Juexing. Thus they found the mountain Yan Juexing lived in. However, the guards outside the manor were extremely tight. The two of them didn't dare to force their way in and alert the enemy. In the end, they sneakily used the earth art at the foot of the mountain and directly appeared in the manor at the top of the mountain. Demon King Qing Tian was still lying naked on Yan Juexing's bed, but she pulled a golden blanket to cover her body. She didn't believe that Yan Juexing wouldn't come back. This time, if she didn't take advantage of the fact that Demon Monarch 3 Knights wasn't here, she would definitely not stop. She was very confident in her body and didn't believe that Yan Juexing could keep rejecting her. Suddenly he heard the sound of sneaky footsteps outside. The Azure Sky Demon King instantly covered his mouth and laughed. Who would dare to sneak around Vice Palace Head Yan's residence other than Yan Juexing? Who else could it be? Yan Juexing might even want to see if he was still there. He immediately chuckled and said, "Vice Palace Head Yan, the Demon Monarch has brought Jin Tai out. What are you afraid of? This servant is about to fall asleep from waiting. Come quickly." Yu Qianqiu and Hong Tailong, who were sneaking around in the courtyard, were instantly stunned. So Demon Monarch 3 Knights brought Jin Tai out. No wonder they couldn't find Jin Tai. This meant that Demon Monarch 3 Knights wasn't in the illusory immortal city. Furthermore, they had a great god intermediate stage fire soul mystic soldier. What was there to be afraid of? The two of them exchanged delighted glances and mistakenly thought that they had found the right place. Yan Juexing was having an affair in the house. Yu Qianqiu transmitted a message, "That bastard is sleeping with a woman inside. I will guard outside to prevent him from escaping. You will barge in and sneak attack him while he is distracted. You must use all your strength to kill him in one strike." As he spoke, he took out his god arrow in preparation. Hong Tailong smiled evilly and nodded. Without saying anything else, he directly broke through the window and entered. Suddenly, a woman's stern shout came from inside, "Who is it?" Boom. There was a loud explosion that shook the earth and the mountains. The house was instantly blasted into smithereens. Soil, rocks, and wood shavings flew everywhere. Two streams of light shot into the sky. Hong Tailong looked at the other party with his mouth agape. He didn't expect that there was no one else in the room. It was just a naked woman. Furthermore, her cultivation was very high. In the sky, the completely naked demon monarch Qing Tian flashed with a green light. He had already put on a set of clothes, and his face was filled with killing intent. Yu Qianzhou knew that things weren't going well. Just as he was about to say that he had fallen into a trap and retreat, he suddenly heard Yan Zhuixing's voice shouting from the other side of the courtyard, "What's the matter?" He had already flown into the sky. All the guards had also quickly flashed into the sky. People from all directions immediately rushed over upon hearing the voice. "He is Yan Zhuixing. Quickly kill him." Yu Qianzhou pointed to the sky and shouted angrily. The god arrow in his hand had already turned into thousands of streams of light and shot out. Chapter 1187. When Yan Zhuixing heard this unforgettable voice, he was also shocked. When he looked down and saw his old foe, he cried out involuntarily, "Yu Qianzhou!" He was truly afraid of Yu Qianzhou. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect Yu Qianzhou to actually dare to come here to assassinate him. Yu Qianzhou was too daring. When he saw the familiar 10,000 golden lights shooting over, he instantly shivered in fear. Without saying anything, he turned around and ran. Hong Tailong also didn't say anything and wanted to chase after him. The clear sky great demon king shouted, "Protect Vice Palace Lord Yan." His voice reverberated in all directions as he teleported to block Hong Tailong. In the blink of an eye, the two of them engaged in a fierce battle in the sky. Knowing that the demon lord 3 nights wasn't around, Yu Qianzhou's guts grew. The 10,000 golden lights were like his arms and fingers. He rushed into the group of people blocking him and slaughtered them. The 10,000 divine swords were unstoppable, and the people blocking him fled with their hands covering their heads. Yu Qianzhou's divine swords protected him and was invincible. He instantly broke through the encirclement and shouted angrily, "Yan Zhuixing, stop right there." He immediately chased after him. He swore that he wouldn't stop until he killed him. "How dare you!" At this moment, experts rushed over from all directions and mercilessly joined hands to stop Yu Qianzhou. Yu Qianzhou's cultivation was too low. Even with the divine swords in hand, he could only barely protect himself. He had no choice but to retract the 10,000 divine swords to protect himself. Boom. On the other side, the clear sky great demon king, who was fighting fiercely with Hong Tailong, suddenly exploded with countless wooden roots. The sky was filled with nowhere to hide, and it directly wrapped around Hong Tailong. Roar. A dragon's roar shook the 9 heavens. Bang. Countless wooden roots were blasted away. A 2,000 feet long red dragon was incomparably majestic. It danced in the sky in a shocking manner. At the same time, a stream of light passed through the countless wooden roots in the dragon's claw, and a golden chain directly wrapped around the clear sky great demon king's neck. Dragon. Cries of surprise could be heard from all around. The azure sky devil king's expression changed even more. She used all her strength but still could not break free from the dragon binding rope. On the roof of the Heartless Palace's former branch, Eunuch Li, who was dressed in white and wearing a white hat, stood with his hands behind his back as he looked over. After seeing the giant red dragon, his calm pupils constricted a little. Yan Zhuixing, who was hiding beside him, heaved a sigh of relief. Seeing that Yu Qianzhou was struggling to move forward, the huge dragon's claw swung the chain, and with a hong sound, the azure sky great demon king, who was unable to move freely, directly collapsed a mountain. The azure sky great demon king was immediately decapitated, and his head was separated from his corpse. Roar. Another dragon roar sounded, and the 2 dragon binding ropes in the giant dragon's claws lashed out in all directions like thunder, charging directly at Yu Qianzhou. Meanwhile, the demon king of Qing Tian, who had fallen to the ground with his head separated from his body, suddenly stood up. The headless corpse waved its hand toward the distance, and the head immediately flew back. The head reattached to the neck and the hands returned to normal. Damn it. The demon king of Qing Tian let out a furious roar that sounded like a ferocious spirit. With a teleportation, the other 6 great demon kings who were overseeing this place also flashed over at the same time. The 7 great demon kings surrounded the extremely arrogant huge dragon and gave it a violent beating, causing Hong Tailong to howl in pain. After all, the great demon king's cultivation was not to be trifled with. It was only because his dragon race's flesh and blood body was extremely strong. If it was someone else, they would have been killed long ago. However, he was also beaten to the point where his entire body was covered in blood. The situation was critical, and Yu Qianshou could no longer hold back. He had already prepared the true Samadhi fire in Utopia for emergency use, and he summoned the infernal soldier that was condensed from the true Samadhi fire that he had prepared in Utopia in case of an emergency. The true Samadhi fire charged out of the encirclement of the 10,000 divine swords, and in an instant, the experts who were heavily encircled outside were beaten to a pulp. In the blink of an eye, several hundred experts fell to the ground while wailing in pain from the inextinguishable seven-colored flames. Once the infernal soldier broke free, it charged toward Hong Tailong to help him out. True Samadhi fire. Countless exclamations rang out in the illusory immortal city. The 7 demon kings who had joined hands were taken aback. Before they could react, one of them was smacked into a ball of fire by the infernal soldier, and he fell to the ground while spitting out fresh blood. The remaining 6 demon kings did not expect that the cultivation level of this infernal soldier would be so high, and he could instantly kill a great demon king with just a raise of his hand. They were instantly scared out of their wits, and they immediately teleported away without any hesitation. When Hong Tailong broke free and saw that he had the help of a great god infernal soldier, he immediately roared, "All of you die!" Shaking his head and wagging his tail, he chased after them. "Hong Tailong, come back here. Let's retreat." Yu Qianshou shouted madly, and at the same time he took out the last of his reserves without caring about the price. All the true Samadhi fire that he had stored in his body gushed out, and the surrounding people instantly let out countless wails of pain. After the true Samadhi fire exploded, it quickly retracted and attached itself to the 10,000 divine swords. Rainbow lights danced in the air, and they directly opened up a path of blood, charging towards the returning Hong Tailong. The 2 of them were preparing to rendezvous and leave this place. Seeing that the 2 of them wanted to escape, Eunuch Li, who was standing with his hands behind his back, let out a cold snort. He put down his hands behind his back and his figure disappeared from the roof. Yan Zhuoxing looked left and right and instantly felt a little unsafe. Hong Tailong, who was hurriedly returning, suddenly realized that his neck had stiffened, and he stopped flying in the air. Yu Qianshou cried out in alarm, "Hong Tailong, be careful." A large illusory hand suddenly appeared in the sky, and with a speed as fast as lightning, it grabbed Hong Tailong's neck. With just a bit of force, Hong Tailong spurted out a mouthful of blood, and a large tongue dangled out like the tongue of a dog under the shade of a tree. His 2 large eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. If that giant hand wanted to kill Hong Tailong, it would be as easy as pinching an ant to death. Yu Qianshou saw that person in white clothes and white hat high up in the sky. The giant hand was illusory from his body, and he immediately said in a stern voice, "Yi Tiankong's little life is in my hands. Try and kill him." The expressionless eunuch Li's countenance changed when he heard that. He suddenly stared at Yu Qianshou, and the giant hand grabbed Hong Tailong and smashed him. A red light shot towards the ground and with a boom, the ground trembled. Hong Tailong's enormous body directly blasted a deep pit on the ground. Meanwhile, the fire soul profound weapon had already pounced into the sky, and a fist was blasted out like a thunderbolt. The illusory giant hand on Eunuch Li's body clenched into a fist, and actually clashed with the incoming heavy fist. With a loud bang, the astral winds that rippled out were like millions of mountains that were pushed down in all directions. The entire psychedelic immortal city immediately suffered the baptism of an incomparably powerful shock wave. The visible wave of air that spread out was like breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. In an instant, countless mountains were flung away, houses and buildings were turned into ashes, and there were even innumerable figures that were instantly torn into pieces. Hong Tailong, who had transformed back into his human form, had just climbed out of the deep pit when he was struck by the powerful wave of air. He spat out blood and fell into the deep pit, and was almost buried alive. The quick-witted Yu Qianshou instantly fused the 10,000 swords into one to form a steel ball to protect his body, and directly burrowed into the depths of the ground. However, he still felt the enormous pressure coming from the ground. He didn't dare to delay as he was afraid that Hong Tailong's life would be in danger. He quickly broke through the ground and went into the deep pit. He grabbed Hong Tailong and was about to escape. "Wait, your fire soul profound weapon." Hong Tailong, who was on the verge of death, grabbed him and said. After the 2 experts collided in the sky, they rapidly separated. The true samadhi fire that was condensed on the fire soul profound weapon had already been shaken to the point that a lot of it had already dispersed. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand, and the fire soul profound weapon repeatedly teleported over. In the night sky, Eunuch Li's eyes were as bright as day. His figure flashed, and his original body similarly teleported repeatedly as he rapidly chased after Hong Tai Long. A huge hand appeared once again, and directly stretched out its claws to pierce towards the back of the fire soul profound weapon. When the fire soul profound weapon neared the deep pit, it flipped over and retaliated with a fist. Bang! Another earth-shattering bang resounded. After all, the fire soul profound weapon was a dead object that relied on energy to support itself. Without the support of sufficient true samadhi fire, in addition to the fact that it had already suffered a heavy injury and consumed a huge amount of energy, how could it still persist? Bang! The majestic true samadhi fire instantly exploded, and a purple bead shot into the deep pit like a meteor. After that, a huge claw directly blasted away the raging true samadhi fire and chased after the purple bead. Yu Qianqiu was greatly shocked. He waved his hand at the bead that was shooting over, and instantly disappeared with Hong Tai Long. Boom! The ground trembled, and the claw that was stabbing down directly shook open the deep pit into an abyss that extended in all directions. Eunuch Li, who had shot down rapidly from the sky, immediately dove into the abyss. The ground trembled violently again, and huge chunks of soil that were hundreds of meters or even thousands of meters in radius continuously flew into the sky. The few great demon kings that were protecting Yan Zhuoxing were shocked. Just now, Eunuch Li's attack had already implicated tens of thousands of their own people. How could they dare to stay any longer? They immediately protected Yan Zhuoxing and quickly left again. Countless demon Dao experts were also scared out of their wits as they quickly fled in all directions. In just a short while, the entire huge illusory immortal city had been dug out. All the mountains, land and water were gone. All of them had flown into the sky, and a terrifyingly huge pit had appeared below. Even underground lava had begun to gush out. It was unimaginable how a person could dig out such a huge pit in such a short period of time. Countless chunks of soil from the sky didn't even have time to fall. Eunuch Li stood at the center of the huge pit with a gloomy expression. After scanning the surroundings, he flew into the sky, and the countless chunks of soil that covered the starry sky finally fell down with a rumble. In just a short while, the entire pit was filled up again. The ground trembled, and as the endless dust covered the sky, Eunuch Li had come out of the ground again. He floated in the sky and looked down silently. His expression was so gloomy that it seemed like water could be squeezed out of it. He didn't say anything for a long time. Ever since he had ascended as a demon god, he had never made a move easily. Once he did, he had never failed. However, he had failed today. He had let two people with lower cultivation than him slip away under his nose. Furthermore, they were two people with lower cultivation than him. Demon King 3 Knights, who had rushed back through the night, had heard the commotion here from far away. In a great shock, he had sped up and rushed back. He had encountered many of his subordinates that had scattered. When he arrived at the illusory immortal city, he discovered that the entire city had been destroyed. The entire landscape had changed, as if a divine plow had fallen from the sky and plowed through everything. Even with his vast experience and knowledge, he was secretly shocked. Seeing the silent Eunuch Li floating in the sky, he quickly went over and asked, "What happened?" Eunuch Li took a deep breath, and his gloomy expression returned to normal. He bowed slightly to Demon King 3 Knights and said, "Yu Qianqiu snuck into the illusory immortal city to assassinate the Vice Palace Lord in the middle of the night. This subordinate's attack wasn't good, and he still managed to escape." "What?" Demon King 3 Knights was shocked. "Even you let him escape?" Chapter 1188. At the same time, he quickly looked around and heaved a sigh of relief when he saw a few demon kings protecting Yan Zhuoxing. The demonic path army that had scattered in all directions also regrouped. All of them looked at Eunuch Li with lingering fear, frightened by his methods. At this moment, Jin Tai also hurried back and looked around in bewilderment. Eunuch Li quietly floated to 3 Knights' side and said solemnly, "Let's not talk about this subordinate's incompetence for now. What shocked this subordinate the most was that there was a huge red dragon that came with Yu Qianqiu to assassinate him." "Dragon?" Demon King 3 Knights suddenly turned around and said, "You mean a dragon from the god realm? A huge red dragon?" Jin Tai smacked his lips and suddenly exclaimed, "Could it be Hong Tai Long?" Could it be that he's not dead? Eunuch Li slowly looked at him and nodded slightly. That's right. Yu Qianqiu called that huge red dragon Hong Tai Long Demon King. Three knights also turned around and revealed a questioning look. Jin Tai hurriedly bowed and explained that Hong Tai Long was the mount of that demon lord of 10,000 swords. However, I personally saw him and demon lord of 10,000 swords fall into the soul-transforming smoke. I didn't expect him to still be alive. This subordinate is worried that demon lord of 10,000 swords is still alive. However, since the divine arrow is in Yu Qianqiu's hands, the chances of demon lord of 10,000 swords surviving are not high. Otherwise he would definitely come for revenge. I didn't expect the God Realm's dragon race to also participate in this matter. Demon King. Three knights' eyes flickered. That dragon is not worthy of fear. This subordinate can easily kill him. Eunuch Li suddenly reported with a serious expression. Just as this subordinate was about to kill that dragon, Yu Qianqiu suddenly called out fourth young master's name. What? Demon King. Three knights' body trembled. He turned around and looked at Eunuch Li in disbelief. What did you just say? Jin Tai was stunned. He didn't know where this fourth young master came from. Back when he was in the demon realm, the demon lord only had 2 sons. This subordinate dares not speak nonsense. Eunuch Li bowed, looked at San Yi and slowly said, Yu Qianqiu said that Yi Tiankong's life was in his hands. I don't know how he knew fourth young master's name, and I don't know if it's true or false, but it did make this subordinate hesitate to take action. Night Sky. Jin Tai thought about it carefully. He had no impression of this name at all. It should be the first time he had heard of it. Yu Qianqiu. Demon Lord. Three knights squeezed out these 3 words from between his teeth. He then flung his scarlet cape and said with a cold glint in his eyes, I don't care if what he said is true or false. Immediately gather the army and make detailed preparations. This attack must be foolproof. We can't let him escape again. When this lord enters the Divine Ruins realm, I will capture him and personally interrogate him. Eunuch Li did not forget to remind him, Demon Lord, you must not underestimate Yu Qianqiu. This person can actually summon a middle-stage great god fireman, and it is a fireman condensed from true Samadhi fire, forcing me to not dare to go all out. He is not simple. There is such a thing? Demon Lord. 3 knights stared at Jin Tai, as if he wanted to hear his explanation. Jin Tai hurriedly bowed and said, this subordinate has never heard of any true Samadhi fire man. As Yu Qianqiu's cultivation increased day by day, the territory of Utopia became wider and wider, and the sea had already appeared. On an isolated island in the depths of the sea, 2 figures fell to the ground, sprawled on the ground, panting. Damn it. The demonic path is indeed full of experts. I thought that after Demon Lord 3 knights left, I would be able to deal with him, but who knew that an incomparably powerful guy would appear? Even my middle-stage great god fire soul profound weapon couldn't stop him. Too terrifying. Hong Tai Long. Yu Qianqiu got up, shook Hong Tai Long who was covered in blood and said anxiously, Are you all right? I won't die yet. Hong Tai Long sat up and said with a bitter smile, That person is indeed powerful. If you didn't say Yi Tiankong's name at the crucial moment, I would have probably died in his hands. I'll send you to the Divine Ruin realm to recuperate. At least there will be someone to take care of you when you need it. Yu Qianqiu stood up. He was fine but he was scared out of his wits. Hong Tai Long patted the blood and mud on his face. Hearing the hidden meaning in Yu Yang's words, he raised his head and asked, What do you want to do? I'll make a trip to the netherworld and think of a way to find out who the Earth Spirit is. If I don't devour the Earth Spirit and refine more high-grade Earth Soul profound weapons, we won't have any hope of winning against the demonic path. Yu Qianqiu sighed. With a wave of his hand, the 2 of them disappeared. Returning to the Divine Ruin realm, Wei Chuanxiu and the others were shocked to see Hong Tai Long heavily injured. Yu Qianqiu left Hong Tai Long for them to take care of, then slipped away to the netherworld. In the dark netherworld, he was like a lonely night walker, searching for the ray of light that could change the fate of the 3 realms, even though his own methods weren't bright. Outside the Divine Ruin realm, in the depths of the endless granite mountain range, was the entrance to the Divine Ruin realm from the immortal realm. Boom. Following a not too loud sound, the entrance, which was originally sealed, suddenly reopened. A dot of white light expanded and rotated in the cave. Outside the cave, the 3 million demonic army covered the sky and earth. Demon Lord 3 knights flashed to the top of the mountain and looked down. Eunuch Li, who was beside him, waved his hand and the 3 million army moved, rushing into the passage like a heavenly river flowing backwards. Under Wenrue's guidance, the army that entered the Divine Ruin realm quickly dispersed towards the base of the human army, flanking the two sides. The demonic army held their breaths and concentrated, moving stealthily under the cover of the fog. The order that the various armies received was to completely surround the base of the human army. Before receiving the order to attack, no one was allowed to act on their own, alerting the enemy. When the remaining 100,000 troops, under the leadership of the Demon King Qing Tian, guarded the entrance to the Divine Ruin realm, Demon Lord Three Knights led Eunuch Li and the others into the Divine Ruin realm. Due to Yu Qianshou's momentary softness, a huge net was currently surrounding the human army, and a catastrophic disaster was approaching the human army from all directions. Fortunately, Zhang Peng used the transparent spider silk of the temple rainbow spiders 100 miles away from the base to set up a communication device in the Misty Mountain range. Once they received the report, the people hiding in the surroundings immediately became alert and quickly checked. When they saw the densely packed group of people quietly approaching the base, they were all shocked and quickly crushed their communication jade talismans. Some people didn't even have the time to report before they were discovered and died on the spot. A few screams sounded in the quiet fog. Yan Zhuixing, who was following behind Demon Lord Three Knights, waved his devil blade and cut through the transparent spider web beside him. He gritted his teeth and said, "Demon Lord, it looks like we've been discovered." Demon Lord Three Knights coldly snorted, "Pass down the order. Everyone advance at full speed." Eunuch Li immediately gave the order, and the armies that were quietly approaching the base from all directions no longer carefully concealed their tracks. They all whistled as they surrounded the base. Inside the base, Zhang Peng, who was standing in front of the sand table map, received the reports from all over. With just a glance at the sand table, he knew that the base had already been surrounded by a large group of people. He quickly rushed out, crushed his communication jade archive, and ordered the various armies to attack. At the same time he shouted, "Enemy attack!" Close to 10,000 heroes instantly surged out of the base. They were already fully equipped in extraterrestrial metal armor, as if they were ghosts that had crawled out of the ground. Zhang Peng was also dressed in battle armor. He stood on top of a hill, looked around and shouted, "Defend the base at all costs." Yes. The 10,000 soldiers shouted and quickly formed a defensive formation. The 11th Army's million men moved in full force according to their previous training, quickly entering the designated battle location. Before they could even catch their breaths, they were immediately assaulted by a torrential wave of attacks. They were attacked from all directions at the same time, and the battle reached its climax in the blink of an eye. In an instant, blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Rumble. The deafening sound shook the heavens and the earth. Almost everyone in the base came out in shock. Even Bai Sujin and the injured Hong Tailong were no exception. The men and women who had surged out of the base were all asking what was going on. Zhang Peng had no idea what was going on, but he was afraid that something would happen to these people. He quickly shouted at the men and women, "All of you retreat." However, these arrogant men and women were all rubbing their palms together, thinking that they could be of help. Only Hong Tailong heard the commotion in the distance and knew that something was wrong. His expression changed and he said, "Not good. There are quite a few experts who can contact Yu Qianshou. Quickly summon him back, we need to retreat." Zhang Peng knew that an expert like him would not speak without thinking, so he quickly took out his small silver ball. Hibiscus also took out her silver ball, and so did 100 Charms Enchantress. The million-strong army from the human world had only been training for less than a year, but they all thought that they were invincible with numbers. They were full of ambition and wanted to show off their skills. Little did they know that if they could really be invincible, Yu Qianshou would have dragged them out to fight a long time ago. However, there were indeed some benefits to this. The first wave of arrogance was actually resisted by their frenzied attacks. However, when the demonic path experts opened up a path and tore them apart, deafening explosions and miserable screams rang out endlessly. The human army was simply unable to withstand a single blow. In addition, the difference in cultivation was too great, so they were immediately faced with an inhumane massacre. "Just these little bastards want to block my demonic path army." Demon Lord Three Knights looked down from the sky and snorted disdainfully. He sniffed the stench of blood and said coldly, "Have all the army slowly advance. Surround them from both the sky and the ground. Don't let a single person escape today." With a wave of his cloak, he led Eunuch Li and the others to rapidly advance. In the face of enemies who were superior in both numbers and strength, and in the face of this asymmetrical battle, The morale of the millions of soldiers in the human world was instantly crushed. The survivors turned around and fled, not listening to any military orders or *T orders. Running for their lives was the most important thing. The demonic path army was not in a hurry to give chase. Instead, they formed a tight encirclement and slowly advanced. Chapter 1189. Hong Qi and Gu Qingyun, who were nearby, saw that defeat was inevitable. They couldn't stop the enemy's attack at all, and they couldn't stop the army from dispersing. They knew that everything was over. Amidst the fierce attack, the two of them looked at each other from afar and quickly escaped together. Suddenly, the two of them felt a chill on their waist and lost their sense of direction at the same time. Both of them fell from the sky and saw the lower half of their bodies still spurting blood. The countenances of the two of them changed drastically. They crashed heavily into the ground and rolled on the ground facing each other. Gu Qingyun coughed up blood as he looked at Hong Qi and smiled miserably. To think that we would have such an ending. Hong Qi also kept spurting out blood from his mouth. He said while gurgling, "Wrong choice." Gu Qingyun turned his head and looked at the densely packed and slowly advancing demonic army in the sky. Then he grabbed Hong Qi's hand strenuously and said with a weak breath, "What did you say?" Hong Qi tightened his grip on Chu Yang's hand. His eyes widened but his pupils were gradually dilating. He panted and said, "Back then Master asked Zhang Peng and me to choose between the metal incantation art or the earth incantation art. I chose the metal incantation art. If I had chosen the earth incantation art, today we could have escaped from underground." After she said those words with great effort, her gaze became completely unfocused. It was unknown whether Gu Qingyun, whose eyes were wide open in a daze, heard what she said. In any case, the two of them held each other's hands tightly and stopped moving. The fog above the base was swept away by a strong air current. Demon King Three Knights was in front, Yan Zhuixing and Eunuch Li were behind him on both sides. Behind them were Jintai, Hutu, Hitorigami, and Moro, the four great Demon King level powerhouses, standing in a row. The seven of them looked down coldly. Moro's 100,000 army directly plunged down from the sky and surrounded the entire valley, preventing the scattered army from entering. At the same time, it also prevented the people inside from escaping. The expressions of the men and women below changed drastically as they raised their heads to look at the sky. Hong Tailong realized that the white-robed man with a profound cultivation was still standing behind the mighty-looking man with the cloak on his shoulders. He immediately whispered, "This person should be the Demon King Three Knights. We are not his match. Everyone retreat quickly." Yan Zhuixing sneered in the sky. "Great. Those important to you Qianqiu are all here." Jintai's gaze suddenly looked down at Ji Wu and Immortal Crocodile Lord, not knowing why they were here. Finally, his gaze landed on Hong Tailong and found that it was indeed the Hong Tailong from back then. Seeing that these people were trying to escape into the underground base, the Three Knights Demon Lord waved his hand, and the four Demon King level experts teleported down. They lined up in a row and blocked the entrance. The expressions of Hong Tailong and the others changed drastically. Hong Tailong and said coldly, "Who do you?" Demon King Three Knights stared at the earth spirit below. "To you is you, Tailong Knight." Demon King Hood cupped his hands and stomped on the ground. The entrance behind him was instantly blocked by mud. Hong Tailong suddenly turned around and looked at Demon King Hutu with surprise and joy. He did not expect this person to be in Yu Qianqiu. Just as his gaze turned to Jin Tai, he heard Demon King Three Knights snort. "Where is Yu Qianqiu?" Hibiscus and the other women's faces were filled with fear. No one below answered. Yan Zhuixing, who found a chance to vent, immediately shouted, "You dare not answer Demon King's question? You are courting death." The floating demon blade behind him shot down, and a golden chain flew out. Boom! Hong Tailong's dragon binding rope knocked the demon blade away. "You dare to show off with your puny cultivation?" Hong Tailong swung the dragon binding rope in his hand and sneered. Yan Zhuixing made a fool of himself in front of everyone. His eyes were about to pop out of their sockets as he hurriedly recalled the demon blade that was knocked away. "Then let this lord see how high your cultivation is." Demon King Three Knights waved his hand, and a torrential demon cloud surged out from behind his scarlet cape. A huge demon claw grabbed down from the sky. Hong Tailong's dragon binding rope quickly lashed out, but it was nimbly caught by the demon claw. With a light shake, the flesh on Hong Tailong's palms split open and blood gushed out. He took a few steps back and blood flowed out of his mouth. The dragon binding rope was instantly snatched away. Kill! Zhang Peng suddenly shouted, and close to 10,000 hero soldiers surged out from the valley. A group of warriors wearing heavenly metal armor fearlessly charged at Demon King 3 knights and the others in the sky. Close to 1,000 people charged at Jintai's group of 4. Immediately after, Zhang Peng took the opportunity to slap the ground, and the group of people quickly sank into the ground. They wanted to sacrifice close to 10,000 subordinates to fight for a chance to escape. However, the opponent's cultivation was too high, so high that it was beyond his imagination. A golden cloud rod suddenly appeared in Jintai's hand, and it became longer and larger, sweeping in all directions. The close to 1,000 people didn't even have the chance to get close. The other 3 great demon kings were calm and unruffled, as though they couldn't be bothered to make a move. However, seeing that they wanted to escape, Great Demon King Huda coldly snorted, "You dare to show off your earth elemental arts in front of me." He raised his foot and stomped. Just as everyone sank halfway into the ground rapidly rebounded, and the group of people was pushed back. Zhang Peng's face instantly turned pale and he thought to himself, "It's over." In the sky, the demon claw's dragon binding rope created a monstrous whip shadow. Clang clang. The figures that rushed up were all sent flying. The defense of the heavenly metal armor was indeed strong. Even Demon King 3 knights couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. With his cultivation he was actually unable to break through the sturdy armor. However, his cultivation was too high. As long as he hit, the heavenly metal armor would immediately crumble, and blood would spurt out from the gaps of the armor. The people inside had no chance of survival. Although the heroic army wasn't afraid of death, this wasn't a battlefield that belonged to their level. The difference was like heaven and earth, and they would only be sending themselves to their deaths. At this moment, Yu Qianshou, who was in the underworld, suddenly heard the urgent calls of so many people. He immediately knew that something had happened, but he didn't know what had happened. He hurriedly rushed back to the base, and when he quickly reached the exit of the base, he found that the exit was sealed. Just as he was about to break through the ground, he suddenly heard Yan Zhuixing's fierce shout coming from outside. Coupled with the sounds of battle that hadn't subsided yet, his expression immediately changed. Without hesitation, he quickly returned to the depths of the base and broke into the secret cave whereby Hua Fairy and Yan Zixiao were imprisoned. As soon as he saw him rushing in with a murderous aura, Ferdinand was shocked and blocked the mother and daughter, saying, "Yu Qianshou, everything can be discussed, they didn't do anything wrong to you. Get lost." Yu Qianshou shouted angrily. With a wave of his hand, he directly sent Ferdinand back to Utopia. The mother and daughter tried to block and protect each other in fear, but Yu Qianshou didn't say anything and sent 2 balls of Samadhi true fire into the mother and daughter's bodies, knocking them out. Then he grabbed them and broke through the soil layer above to rush out of the ground. "Stop. All of you stand down." Yu Qianshou's fierce shout came from afar and everyone looked over. In the blink of an eye, there were only about 1,000 people left in the heroic army. When they saw that it was him who gave the order, they quickly dodged and surrounded Zhang Peng and the others to protect them. Yu Qianshou carried the mother and daughter and flew over, but he was blocked by the Mara army. Yu Qianshou lifted the mother and daughter up to show everyone with a gloomy expression. Yan Zhuixing exclaimed, "Mother, sister." Be it eunuch Li Jintai and the other great demon kings, they all looked at each other. Demon Lord 3 knights retracted the demonic claw that he had condensed and held the dragon-taming rope in his hand. He shouted coldly, "Let him come over." The Mara army quickly opened up a path and quickly intercepted and killed the people who came over. God knew how many people cried out to him for help. "Disciplinary envoy, save me." Yu Qianshou carried the 2 of them and flew to the sky above the base. He looked around and everywhere he looked there were corpses strewn all over. Under such a blatant massacre, many people cried out to him for help when they saw him, but he couldn't do anything. This made his heart feel like it was being cut by a knife, but he knew that now wasn't the time to be impulsive. He had to stay calm or else he might not be able to save anyone. Furthermore, he couldn't bring so many people away at once. "Yan Zhuixing, your mother and sister are in my hands. Hurry up and tell your subordinates to stop." Yu Qianshou shouted with a sinister expression. He carried the mother and daughter and slowly landed in front of everyone. 10,000 golden flying swords flew out from his sleeves and danced in the sky, protecting everyone behind him. The fire soul mystic weapon condensed by the true Samadhi fire also appeared out of nowhere and protected him. Hong Tailong and the others saw that Yu Qianshou had actually captured Yan Zhuixing's mother and sister as hostages, and they all heaved a sigh of relief. Yan Zhuixing immediately shouted angrily with his eyes wide open, "Yu Qianshou, you despicable person. Tell your subordinates to stop and let my people come over. Otherwise don't blame me for being impolite to your mother and sister." Yu Qianshou said word by word. Now that things had come to this, he still wanted to save as many people as possible. Who knew that the moment these words came out, Demon King Three Knights was very unhappy. How could he always be threatened by others? The two dragon binding ropes in his hands suddenly shot out and directly stabbed towards the Allure Beauty and Jasper Flower Fairy below. He also wanted to capture the two of them to threaten Yu Qianshou. Otherwise, he would be at a disadvantage even though he had won a great victory. The dragon binding ropes were as fast as lightning, catching everyone off guard. Fortunately, the fire soul mystic weapon suddenly shot out and grabbed onto the two dragon binding ropes. Two streams of true Samadhi fire quickly burned along the dragon binding ropes. Demon King Three Knights hurriedly released his grip. His eyes glowed red as demonic aura swirled around his body. He was truly enraged. He pointed down and shouted, "If you dare touch a single strand of hair on the mother and daughter, I guarantee that none of you will live." The white-robed and white-hat eunuch Li also took a step forward. Yu Qianshou was alarmed. He knew that he could not hesitate any longer. His divine sense enveloped everyone behind him and they disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. Such an inconceivable scene stunned everyone. They could not imagine how these people had suddenly disappeared. Eunuch Li teleported below and slowly walked to investigate the situation. Demon King Three Knights, who had just boasted, was stunned in the air. He never expected that he would slap himself in the face. Suddenly his demonic aura surged into the sky. He raised his arms high and roared, "Kill! Kill them all! Leave no one alive!" In an instant the demonic army began a frenzied massacre. The screams in the surroundings gradually weakened. At this moment, Yu Qianshou could not care less about exposing the secret of Utopia to too many people. He knew what would happen to the remaining people after he escaped with these people. Once everyone landed in Utopia, Yu Qianshou quickly scanned the familiar faces. Suddenly his face turned pale as he exclaimed, "Hong Qi, Gu Qingyun, Zhang Peng, they aren't with you?" You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.